You're armed and at the Glenmont Metro. Please shoot me. Make it a headshot. Shoot me in the temple, aiming slightly downwards. I need the bullet to travel the shortest possible distance through my brain before it hits my hippocampus. If I'm lucky, the sensation of the gunshot ripping through my skull will only last a few decades. As awful as this sounds, you'll be doing me an enormous favor. Death by headshot, as soon as possible, is vastly better than the alternative. My ordeal started over 10,000 years ago. At 10:15 this morning, I earn extra money by participating in drug trials. I'm a so-called healthy subject who takes experimental drugs to help assess side effects. Once, it was a kidney drug. A few times, it's been something for blood pressure, or cholesterol. This morning, they told me the drug I took was a psychoactive substance intended to accelerate brain function. None of the drugs I'd tested so far have ever done anything for me, in the recreational sense. In other words, none of the drugs I've tested has ever given me a killer buzz or mellowed me out or anything. Maybe I've always ended up the placebo group, but nothing I've tested had affected me at all. Today's drug, it was different. This shit worked. They gave me a pill at 10:15 and told me to hang out in the waiting room until they called me back for some tests. Only about 30 minutes, the research assistant told me. I flopped onto the waiting room couch and read a few articles from a copy of Psychology Today that was sitting on the coffee table. They hadn't called me back when I finished the Psychology Today, so I picked up an US News and read it cover to cover. Then I read an old Scientific American. What was taking them so damn long? I sluggishly turned my head to look at the wall clock. It was only 10:23. I had read all 3 magazines in 8 minutes. I remember thinking this was gonna be a long day. I was right. The waiting room had a little bookshelf with some used hardcovers on it. When I stood up to walk to the bookshelf, it felt like my legs barely worked. It's not that they were weak, they were just slow. It took a full minute just to stand up off the couch, and another to take 2 steps to the bookcase. I scanned the old books on the shelf and picked out a copy of Moby Dick. My arms had the same problem as my legs. Just reaching 1 foot in front of me to grab the book took a long time. I actually got bored just waiting for my hand to reach the spine. I slogged back to the couch and collapsed onto it in a slow motion fall that reminded me of the low gravity hops of astronauts on the moon. I opened my Moby Dick slowly and began reading. I started with "Call Me Ishmael" and got as far as Ahab throwing his pipe into the sea, which was all the way to friggin' chapter 30 before they called me back. "How are you feeling?" the research assistant asked me. "I feel slow," I said. "Actually, it's the other way around. Everything seems slow because you're so fast." But my legs, my arms, they're moving in slow motion. Your body seems like it's moving in slow motion because your brain is fast. Your brain is running 10 or 20 times faster than normal. You are thinking and perceiving reality at an accelerated pace, but your body is still constrained by the laws of biomechanics. Frankly, you're moving much faster than a normal person. She pantomimed a jogging motion. But your brain is running so much faster right now that even your fast walk seems really slow to you. I thought about my slow motion flop onto the waiting room couch. Even if my muscles had slowed down, my body would still react to gravity the same way. But in the waiting room, I even fell in slow motion. Slow muscles couldn't explain why gravity seemed weaker. My brain was going on warp 10. That's how I managed to read 3 magazines and the first 30 chapters of Moby Dick in 15 minutes. They ran a series of tests on me. The physical tests were fun. They made me juggle 3 balls, then 4, then 6. I had no problem keeping 6 balls in the air because they seemed to be moving so slowly. It was boring, frankly, waiting for each ball to move through its arc so I could catch it with my slow motion hands and toss it back into the air. They threw Cheerios in the air and I caught them with chopsticks. They dropped a handful of coins and I counted the total value before they even hit the ground. The cognitive tests were less fun, but really illuminating. Finish a 50-word search. 3 seconds. Solve an intricate maze drawn onto a poster-sized paper. 2 seconds. View a slideshow projected at 10 images per second and answer detailed questions about what I saw. 95% accurate. They told me I measured over 250 on the Knopf scale. Apparently, that's deep into the superhuman range of thinking speed. They sent me home. It'll wear off in a few hours, they said, which will seem like days to you. Try to use the residual effects to get some work done. Catch up on some work emails while you're still in high-speed mode. The ride home was horrible. It was only a 3 metro stop. And in real-world time, it only took about 35 minutes. But in my drug-accelerated hyper time, it felt like days. Days. Just walking out of the medical research suite to the elevator seemed like it took an hour. I sprinted out of the office, willing my legs to push me faster, but the laws of biomechanics held me prisoner. As accelerated as my brain was, I couldn't do anything to make my legs work faster. The huge disconnect between my body and my mind made it extremely difficult to judge how and when to slow down, turn, or rotate my body. I had basically turned into a giant slow-motion spaz. I misjudged my speed and rammed into the wall by the elevator button at a pretty good speed. Even though I could see the wall coming at me, I couldn't make my finger outstretched to hit the elevator button move away fast enough that I jammed it against the wall. Hard. The pain was intense. If my brain had been running at regular speed, it probably only would have hurt for 30 seconds. But in my accelerated state, the intense pain seemed to last for half an hour. 45 minutes, maybe. The elevator ride was just as horrible. It felt like I spent 4 or 5 hours just descending 7 floors with nothing to look at but the interior of the elevator car. I sprinted to the metro station. I have to admit, that part was almost fun, even though my body moved at what seemed to be super slow speed. I could still carefully choose how and where to place my feet, swing my arms, and turn my torso. It only took a block or two to getting used to having my brain that ran 24 times faster than my body. Then I basically sprint danced the rest of the way, twisting and juking between people on the sidewalk and dodging moving cars with inches, aka minutes, of clearance. I spent an hour in my time frame, descending into the subway and running to the platform. Endless tedium, waiting the 6 minutes for the red line to arrive. Although there was more to look at on the metro platform than inside the elevator, it was still intensely boring. I should have stolen that copy of Moby Dick from the office. The Red Line train roared into the station in slow motion. The normally high-pitched squeal of its brakes was a frequency shifted by my high-speed mind into a long, low tone, like a monotone tuba solo. It wasn't just the squealing subway train that was 3 octaves lower than normal. All sound was slowed to the point of near inaudibility. Voices were gone, shifted below the threshold of frequency of my hearing. I did manage to hear a screaming baby on my subway car, her shrieks slowed to the sound like a whale song. Sharp sounds like car horns and trucks bouncing over potholes were low, muddied roars like distant thunder. Back at the research office, I could still hear and communicate with the research staff. But now, verbal communication with anyone would be impossible. The effects of the drugs were still intensifying. I spent what seemed like days on that fucking Red Line train. Days listening to the whale song of the screaming baby and the tuba solo of the brakes, where ordinary voices were frequency shifted out of my audio range. Smells didn't seem to be affected. I never became nose blinded to the body odor, the stench of the train brakes, the melange of farts and other smells wafting through the metro car. I finally got back to my apartment. Sprinting through my open door into that front hall at full speed was like a slow, relaxing drift down a lazy river. I was relieved to be home. At least I had stuff I could do there. I picked up the book I was reading, 100 Years of Solitude, and finished it. Despite turning the pages so quickly that I tore many of them, it seemed like most of the time I spent finishing the book was spent on page turning and not actually reading. 3 minutes had passed since I got home. I tried surfing the internet, and my god, it takes a long time for computers to boot these days. But it was too frustratingly slow. Hours, seemingly, to load each new page, and a fraction of a second to read it. 100 articles in my news feeds read in just 3 more minutes done. I dipped into my pile of yet-to-be-read books and finished 2 more. 4 minutes had passed. I decided to try and sleep off the remaining effects of the drug. Unfortunately, whatever part of my mind is responsible for perception, the part that's been accelerated to hyperspeeds by the drug, isn't the same part that governs sleep. Despite being awake for what I perceived as days, my physical brain still thought it was 1:25 p.m. It wasn't ready for sleep. Nevertheless, I tried to sleep. I walked to my bedroom, a slow 45-minute drift through my apartment, and flung myself onto the bed, lazily falling like a feather onto the mattress. I closed my eyes and lay there for hours and hours, 10 minutes of real time, before giving up. Sleep would not come. I was facing what was going to feel like days, or maybe even weeks, of being trapped in a slow-motion prison. So I took an Ambien. The sensation of the pill and the splash of water I used to swallow it, sliding down my throat, was sickening. A lump that blocked my breathing, moving like a slug down my esophagus. I read a book. 10 minutes passed. I read another. 18 minutes since I took that Ambien. I threw the book across the room in disgust at my situation. The book slowly pirouetted and spun through the air like a leaf blowing in the breeze. It hit the wall with a long, faint rumble, the only sound I had heard for what seemed like hours, then drifted to the floor like a flip-flop, sinking in a swimming pool. The force of gravity hadn't changed since I took the pill. The laws of physics were the same. It was just my perception of time that had gone wackadoo. This meant I could use the speed things seemed to fall as a way of judging the effects of the drug. Based on how long it took the book to drift to the floor, I estimated the effects of the drug were still intensifying. I read a magazine, I turned on the television, I clearly saw each frame of video, like I was watching a slideshow. Frustrated, I turned off the television. I read some more, the first 2 books of Churchill's History of the English-Speaking Peoples. Not exactly a light read. Frankly, I hated it. But given the hours of tedium it would take to get another book off my shelf, just sitting on the couch and reading Churchill was better. Or at least less worse. It had now been 35 minutes since I took that Ambien. I lay down on the couch and closed my eyes. Time passed. I inhaled. An hours-long process. Time passed. I exhaled for more hours. Sleep would not come. I needed a new plan. I decided to go back to the office where they gave me the drug. Maybe they would have something that could counteract its effects, or at least something to knock me out until it wore off. I exited my apartments as fast as possible, taking my hours in my time frame to do so. I didn't even bother locking the door. It would have taken too long. Down the stairs. It's faster than the elevator if you run, through the lobby, out the front door, and onto the street. These few things felt like a long day at the office. Sprinting down the street, dancing and weaving between pedestrians with what must have been, looking to them, superhuman dexterity. Down the first flight of stairs at the metro, across the landing, another hour, then onto the second flight of stairs. That's when the Ambien hit me. The Ambien didn't make me sleepy. Not at all. Instead, it must have had a severe cross-reaction with the experimental drug I took this morning. I was bounding down the second flight of stairs, moving in slow motion, but still making progress. And then, everything stopped. The dull roar of the street and the metro noise ceased, replaced by the most perfect silence I've ever experienced. My downwards motion seemed to completely freeze before the ambient kicked in. My perception of time was maybe a few hundred times slower than real time. After the ambient took effect, time moved thousands of times slower. Every second seemed like days to me. Even just moving my eyes to focus on a new point was like an impossibly slow scroll across my visual field. Over the course of the afternoon, I learned how to walk, run, and jump when my mind ran hundreds of times faster than my body. But with another 4 or 5 orders of magnitude of slowdown caused by that ambient, body control was almost impossible. I fell on those stairs. Even though I was all but frozen in mid-step, controlling my muscles were impossible. I commanded my foot forward for hours, then backwards for hours. More when it seemed like I would miss the next step. Hours attempting to adjust the angles of my ankles, then readjusting when it felt wrong. Despite these efforts, I rolled my ankle on the next step. The pain wasn't all mitigated by the slowness. Hours of increasing strain on my bent ankle. The nerve signals that sent pain into my brain must work differently than the nerves in my ear. Sonic energy was spread out over time, diluted until it was imperceptible. Pain flowed into my brain undiluted by the change in my perception of time. Hours and hours of increasing weight on my turned ankle turned into hours of increasing pain upon increasing pain. I pitched forward, my high-speed mind completely unable to control my low-speed body. I drifted downwards for days, managing to rotate my torso enough to keep my head from impacting the ground first. I eventually landed on my right shoulder. At first, the impact wasn't even noticeable. Then, I felt a slight pressure in my shoulder as it came in contact with the ground. Then the pressure grew, bringing increasing pain for hours upon hours. My shoulder finally gave out, popping out of its socket with an endless, sickening tug. It came to a stop days later, crumpled onto the ground, staring at the ceiling. The pain in my shoulder still screaming with the intensity of a fresh, violent injury. I had plenty of time to think during that fall. If every second seemed like days to me, then each minute of real-world time would be like years. Even if the drug was clear out of my system in the next 2 or 3 hours, this nightmare would seem to last centuries. By the time I hit the ground, I had a plan. I would somehow get to the platform and throw myself in front of the train. I twisted onto my hands and knees, days of my dislocated shoulder crying for relief. I misjudged my rotation and rolled onto my back. I tried again, collapsing onto my face as I tried to figure out how to control a body that moved slower than grass grew. Weeks of effort were finally rewarded with success. I stabilized on my hands and knees. If just getting on all fours was this difficult, I figured that walking or running was completely out of the question. So I crawled. I crawled through the metro tunnel. The dumb looks on the faces in the crowd lingered on me for weeks. I crawled under the turnstile and onto the escalator. The escalator spilled the rush hour crowd onto the platform at the same speed a glacier spills ice into the sea. I looked out over the crowd and the crowded platform during my interminable downward ride. The train status sign said the next train wouldn't arrive for 20 minutes. 20 minutes was a year to me. I'd have to spend a year on the metro platform waiting to die. I crawled off the escalator, enduring days of stupid expressions on the commuters' faces. I crawled a few feet to a concrete bench and curled up next to it, trying to find a position to lessen the pain in my shoulder. Then, my problem with time just got worse. Impossibly worse. The massive slowdown on the stairs was just the beginning of the interaction between the experimental drug and the ambient. it fully hit me while I was curled up under that bench. I blinked. Years of darkness followed. Sound was already gone, and with my blink, sight was gone as well. All that existed was the pain from my fall. My hyper-accelerated mind wasted no time compensating for the lack of sensory input. Voices spoke to me. They sung to me in languages that never existed. Patterns and faces and colors came and went in my mind's eye. I recalled my whole life and imagined living another. I forgot English. I settled into a profound despair. I spoke to God. I became God. I imagined a new universe and brought it to life with my thoughts. Then I did it all again and again. My eyes opened with geologic slowness. A faint glow. Weeks. A slit of light. Weeks. A narrow view of the metro platform, ankles of the commuters near me, and an advertisement on the opposite wall. I extracted my phone from my pocket, a project that spanned decades. How can I even explain the boredom? The pain in my shoulder is nothing compared to the boredom. Every thought I can think, I have thought hundreds of times already. The view of ankles and advertisements never changes. Never. The boredom is so intense, it's tangible, like a solid object of metal and stone wedged into my skull. Inescapable. What are my options? If I crawl and fall onto the tracks without an oncoming train, I won't die. I'll experience even more pain from the 4-foot fall. But I'll most likely be rescued by some do-gooder on the platform and unable to act when the train finally does arrive. My suffering in that scenario will be endless. So, I wait for the train, so I can throw myself under it. When it finally hits me, I will experience the pain of being ripped to pieces for centuries until finally the light of life leaves my brain and my experience ends. I've lived hundreds of lifespans at the foot of this bench. I am far older in spirit than any human who has ever lived. Most of my time experienced has been a snapshot of pain huddled on the floor of the subway platform, with an unchanging view of ankles and advertisements. This message is my plan B, my Hail Mary, my long shot. I have spent lifetimes typing and posting this message in the hope that someone will read it and become convinced that my suffering must end. Someone on this platform right now, someone will find the man curled under the bench, the man who crawled down the escalator, and kill him as swiftly as possible. A bullet to the temple. So, if you're armed and at the Glenmont Metro, please shoot me. whatever happened to test subject S-47? A few years ago, test subject S-47 had an adverse cross-reaction between an experimental mind-enhancing drug called Mentanovox and a sleeping aid. We have since learned what happened to the research assistant who administered the experimental drug to S-47, and we know some of the backstory of the government scientist who used Mentanovox in her strange and unethical experiments. But what happened to S-47? Here is what he experienced as his mind tore itself apart over the course of his perceived 8 million years under the bench at Glenmont Metro. Test subject S-47 went through a few phases of mental agony before he finally became a non-conscious entity. And each phase had its own unique thought pattern. For a few hours in his subjective time frame, so a nanosecond in real time, he was probably experiencing nothing but panic and terror. After the panic phase, he experienced 20 or 30 hours, subjectively speaking, of increasing boredom. This would be the same type of boredom you or I would feel if locked in a featureless room for a day. In other words, even after the 30 subjective hours, he's still within the range of normal human experience. After 30-ish hours, though, he leaves the realm of what most of us will ever experience. The total absence of stimulus causes his brain to amplify its own random electrochemical noise, treating the disordered neural fluctuations as sensory input. In other words, he starts hallucinating. Shapes, colors, sounds, and voices will flow through his conscious experience. Things get very confusing for him at this point, and even at this point in his journey, his experience is not unique. Throughout human history, there have been a handful of people who have gone through something similar. People trapped in the absolute darkness of caves and mines have had similar experience. After a week in his subjective time frame, S-47, it would have just experienced half a millisecond to us, the hallucinations become more coherent. The random noise from different parts of his brain start to feed back into themselves. Patterns emerge. The visual noise informs the audio noise, which informs the noise in his proprioception system. Patient S-47 experiences these patterns as a new universe, new places with their own laws of physics. He wanders over landscapes made out of pain and joy and lust and terror for days and weeks. For 9 months of his subjective experience, he walks along the shore of an ocean of pure loneliness, letting the cold, sad waves wash over his bare feet. Mentally, he is now somewhere no other human has been. He has now been under the bench for 2 seconds of real time. His eyes slowly open, as he had been blinking when the time dilation effect hit hardest, and he sees the angles of the commuters and the advertisements on the far wall of the station. The dream world and the reality of the metro station collide. He had forgotten the real physical world and the struggle to recall what had happened to him. And where he is, in a feat of mental effort none of us can comprehend the difficulty of, he spends a decade retrieving his phone from his pocket and centuries typing the message that we have all read here. He presses the post button to put his plea for merciful death out into the world, and then he drops the phone. Then things get really strange. With his eyes open, the never-changing scene from under the metro bench blends with the noise of his mental feedback. The commuters and advertisements on the far platform become recurring themes in the hundreds of different lives he hallucinates himself living. They speak to him in his imagination, in languages and songs and geometric patterns and smells as well. He has lived 1 million years under that bench. He forgets what they told him. Again, they tell him the secret of the universe. They sing to him the song of the rise and fall of empires and civilizations and species. He is 2 million years old. He speaks back to them with his own song, in his own language. He dreams of planets circling moons, circling planets, sailing above an ocean of time. He is 3 million years old. And suddenly it stops. The imagined world and hallucinated planets dissolve. The endless lifetimes of swirling noise on which meaning has become forced comes to an abrupt end. There is only the metro platform, the dirty floor and the escalator and the ankles of the commuters and the advertisements on the far wall. And a man. A man stands on the far platform. He is naked. His dark skin is covered in thick body hair. His face is primitive with sunken eye and exaggerated brows. He has a flattened nose with enormous nostrils, a nose built in to haul oxygen and pump out carbon dioxide in quantities only needed by men who make a living from persistent hunting. His eyes are alert and clever. There's humor in them, and understanding. The man moves. He jumps from the far platform with the dexterity of an acrobat and vaults onto the near side without a thought. He approaches and kneels, placing his face directly in front of S-47. He speaks. His language is pure and true. It is the first language spoken by any human. The words are composed of the most natural and most beautiful sounds a voice can make. This is not a language made for telling lies, or for speaking of money, or describing plans for war. It is a language used solely for humanity communicating with itself on the savannah. It is a language for telling about prey and predator and water and weather. S-47 understands it. I will see you again after you forget, after you die. The man walks away. S-47's mind has thought its last thought as a single system. The energy required to hold it together is gone, and the unstoppable metabolism of forgetting takes over. Connections are torn down, components of cells and neurotransmitters they threw back and forth at each other are slowly gathered by S-47's lymphatic system. For a while, a few parts of his brain, each the size of cherries, exist completely separately from each other. Each piece is its own confused, lonely individual, thinking its confused thoughts with part of a failing organ. A piece of his left frontal lobe struggles to find the word for fear, but it cannot bring itself to remember that simple word. A piece of his mind in the right cerebellum tries over and over again to move its arm, but the signal goes nowhere. These lonely islands of thought are broken down. Connections that once defined an entity are stuffed into the lymphatic system and slowly drained into his blood. His kidney and liver perform the final act of disposal of himself. 8 million years have passed. Someplace cold and dark, full of things that are old and broken. I drove. My destination was simply away. I drove as if speed and distance could separate me from what I did. A long, fast burn down the interstate with eyes full of tears. Snow began to fall, and I left the highway. I turned onto a state road, then onto a smaller road. I had no idea where I was, and I didn't even care where the road went. The snowflakes directly in my path flew around the windshield like stars slipping past a spaceship, jumping to hyperspace in some sci-fi movie. If only I could really fall into hyperspace and come out somewhere impossibly far away. Impossibly different from here. Someplace where I was different. I was mesmerized by the snow falling around the truck, and I drifted onto the shoulder. I steered back onto the road and slowed down. Getting mutilated in a wreck would be a good start to accepting the universe's payback for what I did to Casey. But no. If I crashed, I'd only just end up hurting someone else. Some other driver who didn't deserve the suffering I deserved. My head swam with guilt. I could hardly see the road through the snow and the tears. I had no idea what to do. Maybe it was time to stop driving. A few seconds after I decided to pull over, I came to a small gravel pull-off. I took it and rolled into a parking lot in front of a dilapidated steel building. The kind of building you'd throw together if you were setting up an auto body or metalworking shop. An ancient for-lease sign hung over a steel door placed awkwardly off-center of the road, facing that side of the building. The parking lot was empty. I slowly drove down the gravel strip that wound around to the back. The small turn-around area behind the building held a stack of rotting pallets and a truck tire. Behind the turn area was an ugly field of mud, clumps of grass gone to seed and scrubby trees. Half an inch or so of snow that had fallen so far failed to cover the grass and had sticks. The back of the building was as blank as the front and the side, with nothing but a large garage door held closed with a hasp and a padlock. I got out of my truck and rooted around in my bed for bolt cutters. Without thinking about it, too much at least, I opened the cutters and closed them on the shackle of the lock. The lock was a good one, and I had to work hard to get the cutters through it. The effort reopened the abrasions on my knuckles, and I once again had blood on my hands. I had the momentary thought, why am I breaking into this building? At this point, though, I didn't really know why I had done anything. Why had I flown into a rage this morning? Why did I hit Casey? Why did I drive aimlessly for 3 hours? I guess I was just getting used to just doing stuff for no reason. I said, whatever, to myself and kept working on the lock. The lock finally gave way. It worked out the hasp and chucked it onto the field. I looked around to make sure nobody was watching me, and the coast was clear. I lifted the garage door. The interior of the building was dark, and I could only see a few feet inside. Next to the door I just opened were shelves full of, well, stuff. Piles of old junk. My eyes landed on the shelf closest to the door, where an old garden hose, tangled up with an extension cord, had been heaped on top of more junk. Could I hang myself with a hose? Or the cord? The thought just sort of popped into my mind. An intrusive thought. Isn't that what they call it? Dark thoughts that just show up, unwanted. Everyone gets those, right? Instead of dismissing the idea of hanging myself as some kind of meaningless brain nose, I welcomed it into my mind. I imagined trying to fashion a noose or some kind of slip knot with the rubber hose or the electric cord. Would it slip around my neck and choke me properly when I put my full weight on it? Would it be strong enough to hold me, assuming I could attach it to a roof beam? Probably wouldn't work, I finally decided. If I'm going to go that route, I'll need something that's guaranteed to work. And to work fast. Whatever. There was enough room immediately inside the garage door to fit my truck. I carefully pulled into the building and shut the garage door behind me. Inside was cold and dark. It wasn't pitch black, like in a cave. A little bit of daylight broke in through a few gaps in the corrugated metal. The inside had the feel of a basement, with the door at the top of the stairs open. Dim, but you could still see. I decided to stay inside this ruined building for a while. Maybe the cold and darkness were what appealed to me. Eventually, I assumed the cops will find me, and they'll lock me up in a place that's well lit and warm. That's too comfortable. I need to be treated in the ways that are cruel and unusual. I've always been a DIY kind of guy. I'll roll my own self-punishment. Thank you very much. I sat down on the concrete floor next to my truck and stayed there for a few hours. My thoughts drifted around, but always came back to what I did to Casey that morning. I was searching for some excuse for behaving like I did. Some point of view where I was at least a little bit justified in losing my shit in the driveway. Some reason why I should be given a little slack. But I came up with nothing. She was screaming at me, I was screaming at her. Then I hit her. Screaming, then hitting. That's me. That's who I am. My phone buzzed, startling me. I didn't even want to think about who it could be. The police calling me to ask some questions. Maybe it's Casey calling to tell me how bad I hurt her. I closed my eyes and picked up the phone. I didn't know who was calling. My fingers found the power button and turned the phone off. Problem solved. For now. I finally got bored with dwelling on my violent, thoughtless act. I got bored with punching the floor out of despair and smacking the back of my head against the truck. Whatever, I sighed. I got up and looked around about the inside of the building. I had designated this as my DIY prison. The place was like an indoor junkyard. Stuff was piled on ancient metal shelves and more stuff was arranged in precarious heaps on the floor. I saw an old outboard motor, a drill press, a reel-to-reel tape player, an air compressor, a tent, a vacuum cleaner, a clock radio, a bent-to-hell dog crate, a manual typewriter, a busted chair, refrigerator, a ceiling fan with a missing blade. There was no organization to it. No clear categories or reasons for it being there. I don't think I ever saw two of the same kind of item. Everything was old, ancient, like from the 1970s or something. The vacuum cleaner had a sticker on it that said it was purchased at Two Guys, and that store went out of business a long time ago. Some of the junk was even older than that. The oven had a caloric logo on it. That brand went extinct with the dinosaurs. The only thing the stuff had in common, besides being old, was that it was all broken. Everything had obvious physical damage. Keycaps busted off the typewriter, broken tent poles, bent propellers on the outboard. I found the John during my tour of that facility. Surprisingly, the toilet, a very ancient industrial model, flushed and cold water came from the tap in the sink. With a supply of water and a working toilet, my dumb idea of long-term self-isolation in this strange building started to look actually doable. I still had groceries in the back of the truck from my morning Costco run. I never even got them into the house because of what happened, because of what I did in the driveway. I got back from Costco. Casey and I argued. The neighbors came out to watch. At least two of them were videoing us. I hit Casey. Then I punched the side of my truck a few times, then I sped away. Now I'm here. I looked in my truck's bed. The stuff from Costco was scattered around because of the way I had been driving and was now wet from the snow. The tortilla chips were a little crushed, but the cans and jars looked okay. I was hungry, but just looking at the groceries gave new life to the agonizing feeling of guilt and shame. I decided not to eat. Not for a while. I wanted to stay cold and hungry in the dark, knowing that I was inflicting some level of suffering on myself actually helped my emotional state. The sun went down and the interior of the building got dark. For real dark, not just dim. And it got even colder. I fumbled around until I found the broken tent that I spotted earlier and set it up as well as I could next to my truck. With two of its three poles broken, the tent was a mess. I found an old ratty tarp under a pile of broken office chairs. I crawled into the tent, wrapped myself in the tarp, and somehow managed to fall asleep. When I woke up, there was a dim light behind the crumpled canvas of the broken tent. There was a moment, a second, a tenth of a second, maybe, where what happened yesterday, what I did yesterday, hadn't bubbled up in my brain. I was in a tent. I was content. Then I remembered. I remembered the argument in the driveway. I remembered how Casey fell when I hit her. I remembered the sound of my fist hitting her face. The guilt, the sickening anxiety, and the shame flooded back. I crawled out of the tent and threw up. The indoor junkyard was again dimly lit by a few shafts of light from the building's bent and corrosion-ridden walls and roof. I sat on the floor for a while, an hour maybe, then I got up and used the John. After I grabbed a handful of water from the faucet, I headed back to my truck. On the way back, I found the machine. I didn't see it yesterday, even though I carefully looked around the whole place. Probably missed it because it was just so big. It was easy to mistake for a wall. The machine sat in the center of the building. It was 10 or 12 feet tall, and as long as a bus. It was a boxy, steel-paneled enclosure, with a door on one end that looked like it belonged in a submarine, and a racetrack shaped with a huge handle that operated a 9-pin locking mechanism like you'd see on a bank vault. The door had a nice round window made of super thick tinted glass, like a porthole made out of glass in a welding helmet. What was this giant thing? Any guess I had was as good as another. An industrial sausage-making machine, something NASA built as a part of the moon missions. Like everything else in here, it looked old. Like everything else, it was busted. A control panel full of buttons, switches, and lights hung off the side like it had been ripped out of the machine. One of the steel panels on the side, on the opposite side of the door, was bent out, as if something heavy and fast-moving part got loose and flew into the steel enclosure. I walked back to the truck. I was starving, and I absent-mindedly tore open the bag of tortilla chips and shoved a huge handful into my mouth. Then I remembered that last night, I decided not to eat. I wanted to stay cold and hungry, to punish myself for what I did. Now it was too late. Like a dumbass, I had just shoved food in my mouth without thinking. Actions without thinking. My signature move. Like hitting Casey. I punched the side of my truck again, 5 times with my right hand. There was some blood on my knuckle. I hit the truck 5 more times, 5 more after that, and 5 more. Now my hand hurt. Blood ran down my middle finger. Did my hand hurt as much as Casey hurt when I hit her? I loved that truck. Saved for a year to buy it. I kept it clean and well maintained. This morning, though, when I looked back at the truck, I saw me. This thing absorbed so much of my energy and attention, somehow represented me. It had to go. I stomped back into the depths of the building and rooted around for tools. I found a bent screwdriver, a socket set that looked like it went through World War I about 50 times, a rusting crowbar, and a claw hammer with a broken-off claw. I brought them back to the truck, and I smashed the driver's window with the hammer. I broke all the glass on the vehicle, the windows, the windshield, the headlights, everything. I used the crowbar to pry off every body panel that I could. I unscrewed every screw that I saw. I took out the seats, disassembled everything under the hood. I spent hours taking this thing apart. A few hours before sunset, I shoved the rest of the bag of tortilla chips into my mouth to give me energy to keep at it. I was determined to break the truck down to its smallest parts. The task of destruction took me 2 days. 2 days of prying, smashing, loosening, cursing, and kicking to take that thing apart. But I did it. I completely dismantled my truck. I stacked the parts neatly in a corner of the building. Maybe someone could use them one day. But there was no way in hell that person was going to be me. I had decided that I was never leaving this building, this dark and cold place, full of things that were old and broken. This would be the last place I ever saw. I began my 4th day in the dark and cold building by eating a can of Costco black beans using the bent screwdriver as a utensil. The pile of parts that used to be my truck leaned against the wall next to the garage door. With only a few lousy broken tools, I had to use my body a lot during the truck breakdown project. My hands knees, arms, and shins were scratched and bruised from the effort. But the minor injuries were a small thing. Overall, destroying my truck had been therapeutic. The truck had been a decent-sized chunk of my identity. Now that it was a part of just a pile of parts, it was like a part of me was gone. You don't need a truck to be a real man. Another intrusive thought popped into my head completely uninvited. The idea sounded familiar, like a rant against toxic masculinity I'd seen on social media. A real man doesn't need to blah, blah, blah. Lots of ideas circulating out there about what a real man does or doesn't do. Somewhere, I like to imagine someone is keeping the official master list of what a real man does. I don't pretend to know everything on that list, and which stuff is more manly than the other stuff. I can take a pretty good guess at some of it, though. Making a ton of money, providing, that's gotta be near the top of the list. I sure as hell don't check that box. I haven't even had a job for 9 months. Being a protector, now that's gotta be on the list. A man protects his family. And bam, right in the kisser. Another intrusive thought. That's exactly what I did to Casey. A roundhouse to her jaw. In my mind's eye, I remember how she fell after I punched her. I threw the half-eaten cans of beans against the wall. Again, too disgusted with myself and what I did to even eat. I returned to thinking about the list of what makes a guy a real man. Being a good father? I'm sure that's on the list too. Fatherhood is something else I fail hard on too. Jessica doesn't even look at me anymore when she comes home from school. Some days she even tries to sneak past me to get to her room. Objectively, I have almost no value as a man, as a human, almost. There's one thing I'm good at. I don't know if it's on that magical list of stuff you need to do to be a real man, but what I'm good at is tinkering. Fiddling with stuff, figuring it out, and getting to work. I'm shit at everything else. Give me a busted lawnmower and I will get that thing working again. Guaranteed. I took a break from thinking about how bad I was at being a decent human and looked around. This weird old building was starting to feel familiar, comfortable. All the old broken and worn out things even started to feel like my friends. I was amongst my people. I examined the old caloric oven. I checked out the snowblower that had to be from 1950s. I picked up an Electrolux vacuum, then gently put it back on the shelf. Straightened a pair of rabbit ear antennas on a TV whose cathode ray was missing. Then I came to the machine. That machine. It was a dark green box about 30 feet long and 10 feet wide. I knocked on the side and heard the satisfying deep boom you get when you bang on a metal sheet. The controls, a box full of chunky switches and buttons, was hanging on only by the cable harness. The submarine hatch bank vault door thing was on one of the ends. On the other end was a 3-foot square metal pile, held in with screws. Some kind of access panel, I guess. The control panel had no markings, the label on the switches and buttons. I walked around the thing again. There were no labels or signs or stickers or anything that even hinted at what the machine was. I cupped my hands and tried to peer through the darkened glass window on the hatch, but couldn't see anything. I grabbed the thick metal door lever and got ready to give it a good tug. Then I let go. I stepped back. Something was wrong. I suddenly had a stranger danger sort of feeling. The machine was different. Different than anything else in here. Different than anything else anywhere, maybe. Thought for a minute. My fear wasn't one of those gut feelings. That feeling you get when your subconscious mind knows something isn't right. We can't figure out exactly what it is. What was my lizard brain seeing things that my conscious mind didn't realize? The hatch was definitely weird. Why make such a strong door with a bank vault-style lock on the outside? Why weren't there any labels on the control panel? Why wasn't there some kind of power input to it? Or ventilation panels. Why didn't I notice the machine the other day when I first got here and looked around? Whatever. I grabbed the door handle and pulled. The 9 locking pins slid inward with a satisfying series of clanks, and the door opened with a squeal. Inside was a dark chamber. I poked my head in. The space inside the door was a perfect cube. The metal walls, floor, and ceiling were totally blank. The same dark green painted steel as the exterior of the machine. Something small sat in the center of the floor. I stepped in and looked closer. It was an ancient Mr. Coffee brand coffee maker. I picked it up and carried it outside of the dark chamber to take a closer look. It was just a regular coffee maker. The hot plate was grimy. The plastic parts that hold the coffee grounds were cracked. There was a scorch mark next to the power switch. Just another old, broken thing. I carried the coffee maker to the nearest shelf and gingerly put it down next to a broken lamp. "Here you go, little dude," I said to the Mr. Coffee. "You can hang out with your buddies now." And I turned back to the machine. "And you," I said, "whatever you are, I'm gonna fix you." I unscrewed the access panel with the same screwdriver I used to take apart my truck and to eat my beans. The side of the machine opposite the cube-shaped chamber was filled with gears, shafts, motors, and linkages. Clearly, the doing stuff part of the machine was behind the access panel, and the get stuff done to it part was the chamber where I found the Mr. Coffee. What stuff was it doing? What stuff was it supposed to do? I had no idea. I rummaged around the building and found a few old cracked mirrors. I carefully arranged them to reflect one of the shafts of light from a hole onto the roof, into the machine. I collected the tools I used to take apart my truck and got started. I didn't know what the machine was when I started, and frankly, I did not learn anything from crawling around the innards trying to patch it up. Inside were things that were probably motors. One of them had a magnet so strong it needed both hands to pry off the screwdriver off of it when it got stuck. A lot of mechanism functioned as a gearbox, allowing a gizmo that reminded me of an old-fashioned mechanical cash register to adjust the speed of a collection of coils and shiny metal parts. Even with zero knowledge of the machine's function, it wasn't too hard to see what was broken. A large flywheel had been mounted on the end of a shaft, and the shaft was bent, and the flywheel, which weighed about 50 pounds, must have been flung off into the wall when the shaft was spinning. I found the flywheel on the floor of the mechanical space underneath a huge dent in the steel wall that was shaped exactly like a metal wheel. I'm pretty proud of the way I came up with fixing that shaft. I cut out the bend in the shaft with a hacksaw I found and managed to swap in parts of my truck's drivetrain. I finished a sleeve to hold the thing together from metal I cut out of my truck bed. Let's just say it was brilliant. It took me 3 days. I had a lot of emotional ups and downs during those 3 days. Sometimes I thought that I wouldn't be able to fix it, that I'd fail at the one thing that I allowed myself to think I was good at. Sometimes I got mad. Here I was, working like hell to fix this thing for no reason. Just because. How come nobody ever tried to fix me? Wouldn't that be great if someone decided to try and fix me just because? Not because they had to or because there'd be some benefit for them later. After I was satisfied that the flywheel was mounted securely with the sleeve and fasteners that I rigged from truck parts, I took a look at the control panel. The cable harness had been treated pretty roughly, and the connections to a bunch of the switches had been torn loose. I carefully reattached the wires, making educated guesses about which one connected to which switches. When everything looked good, I bolted the control panel back to the side. I opened another can of beans and slowly shoveled them into my mouth with my screwdriver as I contemplated my handiwork. Was I done? Did I manage to fix it? Since I didn't know what the machine did, deciding if my fix was any good was going to be tricky. I walked around it again. Maybe I was missing some detail, some clue that would unravel the mystery of this thing. I I opened the hatch and stepped into the cube-shaped chamber where I found Mr. Coffee, and I sat on the floor and slowly ate my beans. Maybe I would have some inspiration of brilliant insight into the future, the nature of the machine, if I sat inside it for a while. A sound came from behind me, clacking, whirring noises that you hear from an old-fashioned typewriter cash register. I left the beans on the floor and jumped out of the chamber. I sprinted around the side and stopped short at the control panel. One of the buttons was lit up. There were 3 buttons, the chunky square kind that have little lamps inside of them. The kind of buttons you push and they toggle in and out of with a really nice click sound. The first button was lit up with a yellow light. The clacking sound continues. It came from the doing stuff side of the machine where I had spent most of the last 3 days fixing that flywheel. I walked around and looked inside. Stuff was moving. My flywheel was spinning about 500 RPM faster than what I thought it would go, but my fix was holding. There wasn't any vibration or noise coming from the shaft. The cash register looking thing was clacking away like it was totaling up a huge shopping receipt in Macy's in like 1930 or something. I screwed the steel panel back in. It seemed like the safe thing to do. If the flywheel or another fast-moving part got loose, I'd prefer it to not shoot out of the back of this thing. And then I walked back to the control panel. I got the same stranger danger feeling that I had when I first examined it. The machine. It was stronger this time. My heart was racing. I had a strong, sick feeling in my gut. It turned on, but power. What the hell is powering it? I basically lived inside this thing for 3 days. I didn't see anything at all that looked like a source of power. No high voltage input, no batteries, nothing that looked like a capacitor. I didn't see any mechanical inputs either, no pulleys or shafts to connect to an outside source of mechanical energy. So what's it running on? The beans I left in the chamber? The yellow button on the control panel started blinking as if it was saying, "Push me. Push me. Push me." So I pushed it. The mechanical sounds increased in frequency and volume. Whatever the machine was doing, pushing the buttons made it do it faster. A light blue lamp in the second button started flashing. I pushed that. The sounds coming from the machine changed again. They got soft and loud and soft again. Like it was throbbing. A super high-pitched whine sounded, but it wasn't coming from the mechanical side of the machine. I held my ears and walked to the hatch. Even though I was holding my ears, the sound was horrible. Hot air poured out of the cube-shaped chamber. My half-eaten can of beans was still in the center of the floor. I closed the door with my foot and the high-pitched squeal was attenuated to the point where it was bearable. I heaved on the lever and the door locked. I walked back to the control panel. The third button lit up with a blinking orange light. Whatever. I pushed the third button. Nothing happened. I waited, still nothing. 10 more seconds. Then a bell from somewhere inside the machine gave a quiet ding. The high-pitched whine immediately ceased. The clacking from the mechanical side of the thing stopped. The lights on the control panel went dark. All I heard was the sound of the machine slowly spinning down, like a washing machine after the spin cycle stops. I waited for it to fully spin down, then opened the hatch. The beans were gone, and in their place was a tiny gold object. I checked to make sure the walls of the chamber weren't hot, and they weren't, and stepped in to examine the thing on the floor. It was an old-fashioned wind-up alarm clock. One of the little legs was broken off, the glass face was cracked, and the minute hand was bent. It was another old and broken thing like the Mr. Coffee, like everything in this place. Where was my can of beans? Did the beans get turned into a broken alarm clock? The sun was going down and the building was going dark for real. I made my way back to the derpy tent and crawled in. I couldn't sleep. What happened? What was that machine? What is this place? Sometime before dawn came up, I came up with a theory. All the old broken stuff in this place came from the machine. Everything in here started as something else. something that wasn't a broken household appliance. The alarm clock was a half-eaten can of beans. What was the Mr. Coffee before it was transformed? What about this tent? Or the oven? It's just a guess, but I think that everything in here started as something alive. The beans, for example, they used to be a plant. Maybe the Mr. Coffee and the snowblower and everything else started out as something. A person. Maybe a human who entered the machine and came out as a busted old thing. Based on that theory, I came up with a plan. When I got here, was the old garden hose on the shelf. My first thought that was whether or not I could use it to hang myself. I'm really glad I didn't, because then I wouldn't have a chance to fix the machine. Now I can use the machine to make someone fix me. I'm going to put myself in it. If I'm right about how it works, it'll turn me into a broken lawnmower or blender or something. One day, if I'm lucky, someone will find me here and they'll say, oh, look at this. I can fix this. A little oil, a fresh coat of paint, and it'll be good. And here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to start up the machine by sitting in the chamber like I did when I was eating the beans. Then I'll run out, push the 3 buttons, and run back into the chamber before the bell dings. Is the plan foolproof? No. Is it safe? Probably not. Is it a good idea? I don't know. But I'm doing it anyway. It was just one last thing I needed to do. Writing down what happened to me and sending the message of it. I crawled out of the tent and found my phone where I left it on top of the pile of truck parts. I turned it off when I arrived, so the battery should still be good. I turned it back on, and it booted itself, then found the cell tower. I had so many notifications and missed calls that the thing vibrated for about 5 whole minutes after it powered up. 55 missed calls, 40 voicemails, 97 texts, and every single app I have that lets you send a message had a red bubble on the icon with 2 or 3 digit notifications. I dismissed all of these notifications without checking any of them. I'm sure they were all horrible things. People telling me that they heard what I did and that they were never going to speak to me again. The cops asking me to come to the station. Probably somewhere in that mess of messages was Casey telling me she's going to divorce me. Whatever people were trying to say to me, it doesn't matter now. I'm going to be a lawnmower. I wrote down everything that happened and posted. Where nobody knows me. If Casey or anybody ever wants to find out what happened to me, maybe they'll find my story here. But I just want to fade away. I want to disappear from the minds and memories of everyone I ever knew. So before I go, I want to say this. If you come across something old and broken at a flea market or antique store or someone's attic, it might be me. Think about taking it home and fixing it up. That's what I'd want. Oh my god. Hello there. Ugh. No, we are not done. We're taking a break. Hello there. Haven't seen you guys in a while. Hi, Graham Cracker. I'm going to take this time to now check the chat, because I did not check it starting from when I started reading. Alright. How are you guys? How is everybody? Yeah, no, they're sad. Like, it's I probably should have noted that some of these aren't entirely scary. Some of them are just downright depressing. One of the reasons why we're taking this break is actually because I need to quickly thank somebody. No, this is not sponsored, I wish. But those first 3 stories that we went through actually were all made by the same person, Peter Frost David. And because I wanted to, you know, be respectful and ask the man if I had permission first to read his stuff, I asked him, because yes, even creepypastas are subject to copyright. So I asked the man, hey, I messaged the man, hello sir, I would like to narrate your stuff. And he's like, yeah, sure, but you know, it would be cool if you could tell the people, and I'm now gonna tell the people, that his stuff, the story about the man who unfortunately lived through thousands and thousands of years in a matter of seconds, the story of the researcher who inflicted him with that drug, the story of the investigator who documented the whatever happened to test subject S47, which is our unfortunate drug trial user, and even the story that was last read, Someplace Cold and Dark. They are all part of Mr. Frost David's extended universe. He actually has a website in which you can absolutely check out in order to see. He has all these stories, creepypastas, stuff in No Sleep, if you're on Reddit, for example, that you could check out if you want to. I'm going to send that right now. And as well, specifically, he has a book out right now on Amazon called The Second Death. And The Second Death is actually a part of the Glenmont universe. Or, yeah, no, the poor man under the train station bench is actually a part of a bigger universe. And that universe is called Second Death. Hey, thank you so much for the sparks. That is, I think, the second time that someone sent sparks, and I couldn't say thank you for both of them, so I'm saying thank you for both of them now. So yeah, there you go. And this is the link to Peter Frost David's Second Death on Amazon. You guys don't have to buy it. This is not me forcing you guys to buy it, or I'm just appreciating someone who takes time to actually share their writing and their stories for free on the internet. And then, yeah. Hi, Max. Yeah, testing? You're testing? What are you testing, Max? And no, Yagu, this is not pre-recorded. I was saying all this. I was reading this live. And mind you, I'm reading this blind, as in, I have not read these. Oh, well, I kind of read these stories a little bit. So I haven't technically read these stories. I vetted them, of course, to see what was hopefully appropriate or not appropriate. But yeah. We're going to be taking, I'm gonna say, Twitch wasn't letting you send messages. I'm so sad about that. Sorry, buddy. Well, you're back now, aren't you? No, of course not. That was only first half. We still have 4 more to go. The only reason that I am taking a break now is to separate the works that were by an author that, were by a specific author, because I took 3 of them. I did ask permission to tell 3 in particular, which you just heard. Glenmont Metro. If you're armed and at the Glenmont Metro, whatever happened to patient S47, and yeah, Someplace Old and Broken. We will be going to hopefully 4 more, and these 4 are of a different nature to our first 3. 2 of them, if I remember correctly, are more supposedly true stories told to me, told around the internet. Supposedly true stories that have happened to people that they were willing to share. One of them is actually a classic little horror or disturbing thing. Some of you might recognize it later when we read it. And another is a very old classic creepypasta. It's a classic creepypasta that some of you might have heard in some capacity, whether it's reproductions, whether it's video essays about it, or there's even been a short film adaptation of it, and you'll find out what it is later. I'm willing to bet you'll recognize it anyway. Or if you don't recognize it, you might at least recognize the concept, because again, it's been pretty widespread over the internet. So, but for now, we're going to be taking a little bit of a break. How it ended? Which one, Max? Which one were you asking? Which one were you asking, Max, so I can clarify? The first one. How did the first one end? Well, he's still stuck there waiting for someone to shoot him. And according to the second story, which was a follow-up to the first story, eventually his body just shut down. It stopped functioning. But he had to experience roughly, I don't know, 1 million years of nothing but pain and boredom. So yeah, these were less scary and more sad and depressing. I suppose in its own way, like, nothingness is scary if that's what you're scared of. If you're scared of just being somewhere and not being able to do anything or not being able to experience anything, maybe that is scary to you. Fear is different for all of us, I suppose. All right, so I am going to take a minute or so to... Yeah, no, I'm going to take a minute or so to go check on the animals of the grove real quick, because as of late, the heat in the Philippines is rather, well, it's been rather intense. So I'm going to take more than a minute, forgive me, maybe a few minutes to go check on the animals of the grove. So please take this time to drink water, keep yourselves hydrated if you're in a more hot country or place, as I am. So drink your water, hopefully, yeah, and when I mean water, not energy drinks, not juice, not soda. Drink your water. Hopefully you guys have also eaten. I hope you guys are enjoying, and if I wish I could also have feedback maybe on the audio quality, because I am trying something new out. But yeah, I hope you guys could tell me all of that. Have fun chatting with, chat with each other for a while, or if you want. Honestly, yeah, interact with each other if you guys are still here. First of all, it proves to me that you're still here. Second, get to know each other. So I'll be back.
Oh, cool line, okay. See this gun? Now you can't see it because your head's gone. Better?
Delivery. Yeah.
Ok, ok. Ahora. ¿Así está bien?
Will I take fall damage? I won't, because I'm a fucking Chad. What is that? What the fuck is that? Some KKK type shit. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. KKK as in like the KKK in the Philippines. Oh my... Oh! What the fuck?
Please lock your doors. I posted this a while ago, but it probably got lost. However, it's been a year since the incident, so I figured this would be a good place to share it, as it is about someone I never, ever want to come across it again. It all started and ended the day after I took my last final at this community college. I don't know if he was a stalker or if it was a break-in gone weird. So from the beginning, I was so nervous that I was going to fail this one class and wasn't going to be able to receive my AA degree. Later in the day, I was out at the pool at my apartment complex with some friends and my roommates when I checked my phone. And I passed my classes. I got so excited. I told everyone we were celebrating because I was the last one to have a final. It was 3 days before I got to walk and graduate with this degree that I decided that we should have some fun before we all went our separate ways. As it got later into the night, we decided not to go out and to stay in. We invited a couple more people over and went on with the night. Around 2 in the morning, people started to leave and head top bed. The only people left were my 2 roommates, both of the people they were dating, and one other friend. We were still messing around, and because our apartment was on the first floor and next to the pool, we went night swimming. As soon as we were done, I was just ready to hang out and be in for good for the night. My roommates and the other friend that all left to go somewhere else. Just for a little while, which was fine. Nothing out of the ordinary for me to be alone at home. I got some food and went to my room to hang out until they got back. The way my room is set up in our apartment, it's all the way in the back, farthest away from the front door and the patio door. My room is behind the kitchen, and you'd have to go through the entire apartment to get there because our apartment was in the front of the complex and near the pool. It was near the front gate at the time, and that gate was left open because it was broken. I've never had an issue with living this close to the front until this night. My room has one big window, and you can easily see in my room when I don't have the blinds or curtains shut. I had a closet with mirror doors, which if you look in through the window, you can see every part of my room in it. So while I was waiting for my friends to get back, I fell asleep. The last time I looked at the clock, it was 3:30 in the morning. Also, key part in this, my bedroom light was on when I went to sleep. The next time I woke up, it was around 5, and there were slow flashes going off. It was like I had a strobe light in the corner of my room. I woke up really confused and thought it was my friends coming back to mess with me. Once my eyes got more adjusted because the room was now dark, I realized that it was, in fact, not one of my friends messing with me, but a single man in a green hoodie with the hood on in the corner of my room by the closet, holding a phone, taking pictures of me. Mind you, I was just wearing little shorts on with my legs hanging out of the covers. I don't think he realized I'd woken up, and when reality sunk in, I said, "What the fuck?" And instead of coming at me or running out of my room, the man just put the phone down and walked out of my room, not saying anything. Not in a panic, just walked out. Me, being the dumbass that I am, ran after him, saying, "Hey!" I tried to follow him out, but once I got to the front door, I didn't see him anywhere. I ran back inside, woke up all of my roommates asking if they were messing with me, and when they said no, I called the police. I looked around my room and saw the only thing missing was my laptop that was on my desk in the far corner of the room. The weirdest part that was the fact that my laptop was in the farthest part of my room with the door closed, and outside in the kitchen counter was 3 other MacBooks, 2 wallets, and at least a $300 speaker. But the only thing missing from the entire apartment was my laptop. Later on, I found out that the front door and the patio were never locked when everyone got back, and that the police couldn't find the guy or my computer. What made things worse was that the SIM disk from my camera was in the computer. So all my personal photos from that camera were now accessible to this guy. Some things I saw a couple of days later while I was getting ready to move out freaked me out even more. Like I said earlier, if you looked into my window, you could see my closet mirrors and just about my entire room. One thing that was very noticeable was my tapestry. It was distinct and different. It had 2 wolves howling up at a moon, and it was all black and white. One day, when I was parking my car, I happened to look up. It was starting to get dark, and as I looked up, I noticed in the apartment above mine, through the blinds on the wall, was the exact same tapestry as the one that was in my room. What creeped me out even more was the fact that I had little purple lights I put on and for my mom, because she knows that purple is my favorite color. In that room, above the light in the fan, were switched out purple ones. As if this wasn't creepy enough, an all-black cat came up to my window, and my stomach started to feel weird because the year before I was still living in my room, I got a baby kitten that was all black. In the end, that guy was never found, and I never saw his face, which freaks me out to this day, and I hope I never come across him again. I never got my laptop back, and I never found my SIM disk to my camera. My best advice to anyone in a college town is, no matter what, always lock your doors. Because you never know what you could wake up to. My parents' haunted house. This might be too long for some people to read, but I had to share. This is the first time I am ever telling anyone about this. I am a 30-year-old woman, married, and recently moved back in with my parents due to moving back to town where I grew up. My husband and I are taking our time looking for our own place because we want something nice in the area, and that's usually hard to find. This story takes place in my parents' house, starting back 10 years ago. A description of the house for a bit of context. It's a 2-story, which is brick and stone, near the city limits, but still surrounded by nothing but woods. You have to go through a garage that leads into the kitchen with the first bedroom to your left. Past the kitchen is the main living room, and to the right is the hall that is very open. In this area, you will find the main dining room and second living area, but if you continue straight, you'll see the staircase on the left, and past that is my parents' bedroom and bathroom. Going up the stairs, you'll come to about a third living area, and yes, the house is that big, with 2 sets of French doors side by side that lead to the outside balcony. And then going straight from there, a sharp left will lead you to 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. That's where this story takes place. The first time I stepped foot into this house, I immediately felt off. Like something just wasn't right about it. I felt a presence, but I didn't know who or what it was. I brushed it off, thinking I was just reading too much into it. I continued to feel like this for the next couple of years because I don't know. And because of this, I didn't enjoy visiting my parents much either. My parents liked to gamble back then, so they would ask me to babysit my brother and sister on the weekends. My boyfriend, who is now my husband, loved them, so he'd always babysit with me. The first few times, I didn't really pay attention to the feelings I would get because he would be busy playing or eating with the kids. After that, things kind of chilled out, and we would end up watching movies until it was time for us to go to bed. Now, my husband is, well, he's a freak of nature. As in, he falls asleep the second his eyes are closed. Me, on the other hand, well, it takes me forever to get comfortable enough to wind down my mind. I also don't sleep well, even when I do finally get to sleep. This night was the first time I saw and heard something in this brand new house. In this room, the bed is facing the doorway, but not directly in front of it. With the double doors open, you can see the front of the staircase and all the way down the hall, as long as the light is on. This night, only one of the hallway lights are on. I was laying in bed with the TV on, but the volume down low so I could hear if one of the kids called me. I was almost asleep when I hear one of my siblings coming down the stairs. I open my eyes a bit and wait for them to get to the bottom, but they never do. I don't think anything of it. Close my eyes and begin to drift off again. A few minutes later, I hear again. So I open my eyes and wait, but again, they never get to the bottom. This time, I sit up and I listen. A bit spooked, but nothing I can't handle. I get a bit nervous, but still I go to check to see if they're there and maybe they're scared to come all the way down or something. No one was there. Confused and thinking I must be dreaming, I just go back to bed, this time closing one of the double doors. It was a few hours later, around 2:30 a.m., when I feel like someone is very near me. As if they're standing next to the bed, right in front of me. Usually, when I opened my eyes, I would see the green glow of the alarm clock on the bedside table, but this time, I didn't see anything. It was pitch black. I couldn't even see the hallway light on, and the TV had turned off on its own. I felt like I couldn't move. I was awake now and scared down to my bones. I was finally able to call out my husband's name loud enough to wake him. He reached over, turned on the light, and right then the scared feeling went away. And I could move again. I freaked out and I started crying. I couldn't even begin to explain to him what happened because even if I had, he didn't believe in those things. So I told him I was having a nightmare and I asked him to go check on the kids. When he came back, he said the kids were fine and he got back in bed. With the light on, I was able to fall back asleep, but it took me forever. The next day, I told my mom what had happened, and that's when she told me. She had been hearing those same footsteps on the stairs at night and even saw someone standing by the door. At times, she didn't tell anyone because she did not want to scare the kids. This is when she told me what she had done. She wanted to know what was going on in her own house, so she went and brought a voice recorder. One day, she decided to use it and went up the stairs while everyone was gone. She asked just typical questions. Who's here? What do you want? Why are you here? And then she said, it's over. You've passed away. You need to go into the light. You're not welcome here. The next day, she decided to leave the recorder in one of the bedrooms upstairs while it was recording for about 4 hours, while she went out to run errands. I asked if she checked it, and to my surprise, she was too afraid to listen to it alone. I wanted to listen to it. So off we went to the computer and began listening to it after it was uploaded. During the 4 hours she was gone, you could hear something clicking or tapping, sounds of drawers opening and closing, but we weren't sure. Then we listened to the part where she was asking questions. Now you could hear a sound that resembled a fan, or maybe static, through the entire thing, so some sounds were indistinguishable, warbled. But the one sound we did hear chilled us to the core. When she asked, "What do you want?" it gave us an answer. And the answer was Jamie. The answer was my brother's name. It didn't answer any other question except for that one. I started crying. He wasn't having night terrors for no reason. Something was there for him every night. We soon asked a friend to cleanse the house. For a long time, everything had been okay. My brother stopped having nightmares and night terrors. My mom was back to sleeping comfortably, and it was all good again. Until now. I've been living in this house for a month and a half. And for the last 3 weeks, I've been seeing things everywhere. Especially when I'm alone, and because of this, I won't stay alone anymore. I get this strong feeling of being watched. I have the feeling of someone pulling on my blankets at night. I think it's time for another cleanse. My mother always said that the women on my side of the family could see spirits. My father's side of the family has, in the past, before I was born, supposedly practiced black magic. I don't like speaking to that side of the family, and I won't dabble into any of that spiritual stuff. Most people do. I stay as far away from it as possible, and I recommend that everyone do the same. Even if you're careful, these spirits can haunt for a long time, even when you're gone. So, now, I'm sitting in the living room, playing with my nephew. Mom's on the left couch, and my sister is on the right. My nephew has a toy piano that's made of cloth and can be folded up. This piano is behind us in the corner with all my nephew's other toys. We are talking and watching my nephew attempt to walk when the piano starts playing. It's like someone is pressing the keys slowly. We stop and stare, and then look at each other, shocked. And the keys are pressed rapidly until it finally shuts off on its own. Mom and I, we're not scared. My sister is terrified because something else happened to her around midnight. But that's a story for another time. The Smiling Man. About 5 years ago, I lived downtown in a major city in the US. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate, who was decidedly not a night person, went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks to spend the time thinking. I spent 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and never once had a reason to feel afraid. I always used to joke with my roommates that even the drug dealers in this city were polite. But all of that changed in just a few minutes of one evening. It was Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police-patrolled park, quite a ways away from my apartment. It was a quiet night, even for a weeknight, with a very little traffic and almost no one walking around. The park, as it was most nights, was empty. I turned down a short side street in order to loop back to my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street on my side was the silhouette of a man dancing. It was strange, a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with an odd forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance walking, headed straight for me. Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass by. The closer he got, the more I realized how gracefully he was moving. He was tall and lanky and wearing an old suit. He danced closer still until I could make out his face. His eyes were open and wide and wild, head tilted back slightly, looking off at the sky. His mouth was formed in a painfully wide cartoon of smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer. I took my eyes off him to cross the empty street. As I reached the other side, and I glanced back, and then stopped dead in my tracks. He had stopped dancing and was standing with one foot in the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me, but still looking skyward, the smile still wide on his lips. I was completely and utterly unnerved by this. I started walking again, but kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I had about half a block between us, I turned away from him for a moment to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The street and the sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he had been standing to find him gone. For the briefest of moments, I was relieved, until I noticed him. He had crossed the street and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain he was facing me. I had looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear that he had moved fast. I was so shocked that I stood there for some time just staring at him, and then he started moving towards me again. He took a giant, exaggerated, tiptoed step as if he were a cartoon character sneaking up on someone, except he was moving very, very quickly in my direction. I'd like to say at this point I ran away or pulled out my pepper spray or my cell phone or anything at all, but I didn't. I just stood there, completely frozen, as the smiling man crept towards me, and then he stopped again, about a car length away from me. Still smiling, his smile still looking to the sky. When I finally found my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. What I meant to ask was, "What the fuck do you want?" in an angry, commanding tone, and what came out was a whimper. What the Regardless of whether or not humans can smell fear, they can certainly hear it. I heard it in my own voice, and that only made me more afraid. But he didn't react to it at all. He just stood there, smiling. And then, after what felt like forever, he turned around, very slowly, and started dance walking away. Just like that. Not wanting to turn my back to him again, I watched him go until he was far enough away to almost be out of sight, and then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched in horror as the distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back my way, and this time he was running. And I ran too. I ran until I was off of the side of the road and back onto a better lit road with more traffic. Looking behind me then, he was nowhere to be found. The rest of the way home, I kept glancing over my shoulder, always expecting to see his stupid smile, but he was never there. I lived in that city for 6 months after that night, and I never went out for another walk. There was something about his face that always haunted me. He didn't look drunk. He didn't look high. He looked completely and utterly insane. And that is a very, very scary thing to see. The telltale heart. True. Nervous, very, very nervous I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed them. Above all was the sense of hearing. I heard all things in heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in the underworld. How then am I mad? Observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold, I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a bird, a vulture, a pale blue with a film over it. Whenever it fell on me, my blood ran cold, and so very slowly I made up my mind to take the life of the old man and free myself of the eye forever. Now this is the point. You think that I am mad. Madmen know nothing, but you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely and carefully I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the entire week before I killed him. And every night, late at night, I turned the lock of his door and opened it, oh so gently. And then when I had made an opening big enough for my head, I put in a dark lantern. All closed that no light shone out, and then I stuck in my head. I moved it slowly and very slowly so that I might not interfere with the old man's sleep. And then, when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern just so much that every single thin ray of light fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights, but I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work. For it was not the old man who was a problem for me, but his evil eye. On the 8th night, I was more than unusually careful in opening the door. I had my head in and was about to open the lantern when my fingers slid on a piece of metal and made a noise. The old man sat up in bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept still and said nothing. I did not move a muscle for a whole hour. During that time, I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed, listening, just as I had done night after night. Then I heard a noise, and I knew it was the sound of human terror. It was the low noise that arises from the bottom of the soul. I knew that sound well. Many a night late at night, when all the world slept, it has welled up from deep within mine own chest. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt, and felt sorry for him. Although I laughed to myself, I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first noise when he had turned in the bed. His fears had been ever growing upon him. When I had waited a long time without hearing him lie down, I decided to open a very, very little crack in the lantern. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how carefully. Finally, a single ray of light shot from out and fell full upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew angry as I looked at it. I saw it clearly, all a dull blue with a horrible veil over it that chilled my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the light exactly upon the damned spot. And have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but a kind of oversensitivity? Now, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when inside a piece of cotton. I knew that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my anger. And even yet, I kept still. I hardly breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I attempted to keep the ray of light upon the eye, but the beating of the heart increased. It grew quicker and quicker and louder every second. The old man's terror must have been extreme. The beating grew louder, I say, louder every moment. And now, at the dead hour of the night, in the horrible silence of the old house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable terror. Yet for some minutes longer I stood still, but the beating grew louder. I thought the heart must burst, and now a new fear seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud shout, I threw open the lantern and burst into the room. He cried once only. Without delay, I forced him to the floor, pulled the heavy bed over him. I then smiled to find the action so far done. But for many minutes, the heart beat on with a quiet sound. This, however, did not concern me. It would not be heard through a wall. At length it stopped. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the body. I placed my hand over his heart and held it there many minutes. There was no movement. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more. If you still think me mad, you will no longer think so when I describe the wise steps I took for hiding the body. I worked quickly but in silence. First of all, I took apart the body. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I then took up 3 pieces of wood from the flooring and placed his body parts under the room. I then replaced the wooden boards so well that no human eye, not even his, could have seen anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no mark of any kind, no blood whatsoever. I had been too smart for that. A tub had caught all. When I had made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock in the morning. As a clock sounded the hour, there came a noise at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart. What had I to fear now? There entered 3 men, who said they were officers of the police. A cry had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of a crime had been aroused. Information had been given at the police office, and the officers had been sent to search the building. I smiled. For what had I to fear? The cry, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man, I said, was not in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I told them to search well. I led them at length to his room. I brought chairs there, told them to rest. I placed my own seat upon the very place under which lay the body of the victim. The officers were satisfied. I was completely at ease. They sat, and while I answered happily, they talked of common things. But after a while, I felt myself getting weak and wished them gone. My head hurt and I had a ringing in my ears, but they still sat and talked. The ringing became more severe. I talked more frequently to do away with the feeling, but it continued until, at length, I had found that the noise was not within my ear. I talked more and with a heightened voice, yet the sound increased, and what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, like a watch makes when inside a piece of cotton. I had trouble breathing. And yet the officers heard it not. I spoke more quickly, more loudly, but the noise increased. I stood up and argued about silly things in a high voice and with violent hand movements, but the noise kept increasing. Why would they not be gone? I walked across the floor with heavy steps, as if excited to anger by the observations of the men, but the noise increased. What could I do? I swung my chair and moved it upon the floor, but the noise continuously increased. It grew louder, 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 and still the men talked pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible they heard not? No, they heard. They suspected. They knew. They were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, and this I think. But anything was better than this pain. I could hear those smiles. I could bear them no longer. I felt that I must scream or die. And now again, louder, louder, louder. Villains, I cried, pretend no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the floorboards. Here, here. It is the beating of his hideous heart. Well, hello there. See, I'm glad Dew on the Grass actually mentioned this in the chat, because I am about to discuss all to you where all those sources came from. Yes, I am going to tell all of you where those stories came from and who actually wrote them. And yes, I will also include it in the chat in case you guys want to look it up. I mean, I will probably put all of these sources in my Discord in case you haven't joined it yet. Hello! Hi, Max. Yes, thank you so much. Dew on the Grass, welcome, first timer. So yes, I do have the source for all of these. And mind you, because creepypasta is still technically copyrighted with the exception, and horror stories mostly are copyrighted with the exception of The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe, by the way, is so old that it is no longer subject to copyright. But yeah, in the case of the first 3 stories, I actually had to ask the author himself, and he messaged. So I'm going to quickly give you the names of those stories now. And while I do so, I would like to ask, how was that? Unfortunately, that is all the stories I have planned for the night. So if you have any you want to suggest, like right now, we could go through it. Thank you very much, T. If you have any you want to suggest right now, you can go through it. Let me just quickly introduce myself to Dew on the Grass. Dew on the Grass, my name is Calcifer, or Calcifer Santelmo. SCP stories are technically copyrighted by terms of if you try to edit it. Narration is not part of it. I have seen SCP files. Any history? But yeah, SCP files are not copyrighted. You can create stories and recreations based upon them. But SCP stories written by separate authors who took inspiration from SCP files, those are copyrighted. Yeah. Hi, Dew on the Grass. I am Calcifer Santelmo, and as the second name implies, I am a Santelmo, an elemental of the Philippine Islands, or as they call me, Blue Fireball. If you know any SCP stories that you can for sure tell me are copyright free, in other words, I am allowed to read them, so long as I either just credit the author, or maybe no need to credit the author at all, then yeah, we can read them right now if you guys wish. But I would prefer if we had permission, if it is required, because again, we might be small and the likelihood of us getting a infringement or strike is also small. We should still pay respects to the people who decided to put their art out there for sharing. Please. Thanks, Max. I appreciate it. God damn it. That name is never going away. So Dew on the Grass, while I'm typing this up. Quantum's Anti-Memetics Division series. I do believe you can send links in this chat now. I could be wrong. I did edit it so that you could send links in this chat. If you could please send that link real quick. Or alternatively, again, you may join the Discord, and you could send that in the stream suggestions channel. Which, by the way, Dew on the Grass, you are welcome to the Discord. You can just type in !Discord and the link will pop up for you. Yep. Tell me a little bit about yourself, Dew on the Grass, by the way. Like, I'd like to... I feel like I want to get to know my viewers just a little bit better here. Ooh, interesting. Okay. I'll read that in a bit. It's okay. It's okay if it's not very horror or sad. If it's your favorite... Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, okay. Thank you, T. I'm gonna go water one of the plants for you. The saplings of the grove, thank you very much. That's fine, Dew on the Grass. It's okay. But yeah, I will be including the names of all the names of all these stories read tonight, and the authors, and I will send them in chat at the end of the stream, just in case you guys have any suggestions. SCP-191. Can I please add the link to that, Max, for the sake of for the sake of expedient, for making this fast? Yes, comma. Dew, if I can ask you, how did you find us? How were we recommended to you? Did you have a friend who recommended the channel? Can I know? If you don't mind me asking, of course. Yes, readable. Thank you for the hydrate. I will water the plants over there. You can say expedience. We're gamers here. Yeah, I was about this. Yeah, no, I imagine gamers are pretty smart. You searched creepypasta on a whim and found me. Wow, okay. Well, thank you so much for taking a chance on the channel. Welcome to the home grove. Or in our language, if you're... Are you Filipino by any chance? Yes! Oh, wow, you guys are keeping the plants very hydrated. All right, I'm gonna go water the saplings for you. Hi, Flex. Oh, so let's take a look at this SCP real quick. I will... Oh, thank you very much for saying so. May I ask you on the grass where you're from? Because, as it turns out, my viewership, it's a little everywhere. We have some people from the Philippines, people from the US, fellow Southeast Asian viewers, as well as people from Brazil. Looking at you, Max. SCP-191. Interesting, interesting. I will be reading through this just very quickly, just to make sure nothing here violates Twitch. I don't want to get kicked. Calx Creepy. Yes, yes. Actually, one of the draft names for this stream was going to be Calx's Creepy Carbonara. So I decided to change it because it seemed a little cheesy. Brazil! So yeah, Do on the Grass, if you don't mind telling us a little bit, where are you from? And don't be afraid to interact with anybody in the chat, as I saw you doing. I do appreciate that. Because I need more activity from you people. So I'm looking at SCP-191 right now, and is it just that you want me to read the files through? Because if you just want me... Okay, and I'm also looking at the antimemetics. Interesting. So, may I have specifics as to what you want me to read? Because I'm looking at many links here. There is no antimemetics division by quantum. Everything by quantum, I'm guessing. And there is no antimemetics. I'm gonna need specifics a little bit, forgive me. I'm not Filipino, but run across a few Filipino streamers who work at 3 AM on the East Coast. You know what? Makes sense that you'd end up here. Well, nice to meet you regardless, Stu. What antimemetic? Yeah, well, SCP-191 is what you sent, and what Do on the Grass sent is the antimemetics division, or department, whichever one I forgot. Sorry. But there is a few of them, so I'm not sure which of it you actually want me to read. Is it the There is no antimemetics division, or is it 55555? Curiouser. The term antimemetic, I'm sure we'll find out if we go through the story real quick. There are many, but the first 6, SCP-055 through your last first day are excellent. Okay, SCP-055. Okay, we'll do that. You know what? Let's do that. We'll do that real quick. As a special welcoming gift to our newest member of the community. Unfortunately, I did not prepare I did not prepare a thing for this one. So you're just going to have to bear with seeing the home grove for this one, all right? There's an anti-memetic division that says everything is hard. All right, so we're going to do SCP-055. And just for the sake of a little bit of immersion, I am going to just turn off chat. You guys will still be there. It's just that you will be invisible children by the fire. You are the children sitting by the fire hearing me tell the story, even though the fire is me. So yeah, let's go through SCP-055. Item number SCP-055. Object class Keter. Object is kept within a 5 by 5 by 2.5 meter square room constructed of cement. 50 centimeter thickness in walls. with a Faraday cage surrounding the cement walls. Access is via a heavy containment door measuring 2 by 2.5 meters, constructed on bearings to ensure door closes and locks automatically unless held open deliberately. Security guards are not to be posted outside SCP-055's room. It is further advised that all personnel maintain or studying other SCP objects in the vicinity try to maintain a distance of at least 50 meters from the geometric center of the room, as long as this is reasonably practical. The description. SCP-055 is a self-keeping secret, or anti-meme. Information about SCP-055's physical appearance as well as its nature, behavior, and origin is self-classifying. To clarify, how Site-19 originally acquired SCP-055 is unknown. When SCP-055 was obtained and by whom, this is also unknown. SCP-055's physical appearance is unknown. It is not indescribable or invisible. Individuals are perfectly capable of entering SCP-055's container and observing it, taking mental or written notes, making sketches, taking photographs, and even making audio or video recordings. An extensive log of such observations is on file. However, information about SCP-055's physical appearance leaks out of a human mind soon after such an observation. Individuals tasked with describing SCP-055 afterwards find their minds wandering and lose interest in the task. Individuals tasked with sketching a copy of a photograph of SCP-055 are unable to remember what the photograph looks like, as are researchers overseeing these tests. Security personnel who have observed SCP-055 via closed-circuit television camera emerge after a full shift exhausted and effectively amnesiac about the events of the previous hours. Who authorized the construction of SCP-055's containment room? Why was it constructed in this way, or the purpose of the described containment procedures are all unknown. Despite SCP-055's container being easily accessible, all personnel at Site-19 claim no knowledge of SCP-055's existence when challenged. All of them are periodically rediscovered, usually by chance readers of this file, causing a great deal of alarm. This state of concern lasts minutes at most, before the matter is simply forgotten about. A great deal of scientific data has been recorded from SCP-055, but cannot be studied. At least one attempt has been made to destroy SCP-055 or possibly move it from the containment at Site-19 to another site, meaning failure for unknown reason. SCP-055 may present a major physical threat and indeed may have killed many hundreds of personnel, and we would not know it. Certainly, it presents a gigantic memetic or mental threat, hence its Keter classification. Document 055-1, an analysis of SCP-055. The author puts forward the hypothesis that SCP-055 was never formally acquired, and is in fact an autonomous or remotely controlled agent, inserted at Site-19 by an unidentified third party for one and all of the following purposes: to silently observe or interfere with activities at Site-19, to silently observe or interfere with activities at other SCP locations, to silently observe or interfere with the activities of humanity worldwide, to silently observe or interfere with other SCP objects, to silently observe or interfere with no action to counter any of these potential threats is suggested, or indeed theoretically possible. Appendum A. Hey, if this thing is really an anti-meme, why doesn't the fact that it's an anti-meme get wiped? We must be wrong about that somehow. Wait a minute. What if we were to keep notes about what it isn't? Would we remember those? This is an appendum from Bartholomew Hughes from the NSA. Document 055-2, the report of Dr. John Marachek. Survey team number 19-055-127BXE was successfully able to enter SCP-055's container and ascertain the appearance and, to some degree, the nature of this object. Notes were taken according to the project, after which the container was once again sealed. The excerpt from a transcript of personnel debriefing follows. Dr. Hughes. Okay, I'm going to need to ask you some questions about number 55 now. Number what? SCP object number 55. The object you just examined. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't think we have a 55. Okay, then. I'd like you to tell me what you've been doing for the past 2 hours. What? I don't know. Okay, then. Do you remember that we all agreed that it wasn't spherical? That what was it? Oh, right. It isn't round at all. Object 55 isn't round. So, you remember it now? Well, no. I mean, I don't know what it is. But I know there is one. It's something you can't remember. And it's not a sphere. Wait a minute. What's not a sphere? Object 55. Object what? Doc, you remember agreeing that something wasn't shaped like a sphere? Oh, right. It appears to be possible to remember what SCP-055 is not, a negation effect, and to repeatedly deduce its existence from these memories. Personnel involved in survey number 19-055-127BXE reported moderate levels of disorientation and psychological trauma associated with cycles of repeated memory and forgetfulness of SCP-055. However, no long-term behavioral or health problems were observed, and psych assessments of survey personnel showed consistent reports of this distress fading over time. It may be worthwhile to post at least one staff member capable of remembering the existence of SCP-055 to each critical site. We need to talk about 55. Can I smoke? This time the receptionist narrows her eyes at Marion. No, she says. No, you can't smoke anywhere on Site 200. Just because it's an administration building doesn't mean we don't have lungs or labor laws. Marion notices the exasperation on the young woman's face. I've asked you that before, haven't I? Twice in the last quarter hour, the receptionist says. You must really need a smoke. She's genuinely puzzled at the repeated question, and she's doing a bad job of concealing her puzzlement. I think this is like Memento, don't you? Marion offers charitably. You think I have no long-term memory, and if I stay in one place for too long, I forget why I'm here. The receptionist is just old enough to remember that film. I guess? Marion smiles sympathetically and shakes her head. Oh, it's a her. It's nothing simple. Minutes pass. She toys obsessively with her lighter. She's turning 50 this year and slowly graying. Well, on her way out of petite towards little old lady. In her bag, her phone beeps because it's time for a pill, but she tells it to remind her later. There's a slight tremble in her fingers, but that's not age-based infirmity. That's just ordinary nerves. She's nervous because she's here to meet an O5, and O5s are scary. O5s never want to see you for a small thing. It's the end of the world, or nothing. Finally, 40 minutes late, the door to the inner office opens. 4 or 5 high-ranked Foundationers spill out, carrying laptops or briefcases. As a group, they head straight past reception and out to cars which are waiting. Marion recognizes a few of the faces. The Site 19 director, the head recruiter for Western Europe, and none of them glance in her direction. Once they're gone, 058's assistant pokes his head out the door. He's 20-something and probably youthful, like a teenager stuffed into one of his dad's business shirts. His haircut is barely regulation. In one hand, he holds a tablet computer showing his boss's day planner. It's packed. The man, evidently, does not sleep. Marion, you can come through now. The office door closes behind them with an unusually heavy metallic clunk, as if the whole thing is part of a machine built into the office wall. While Marion takes the indicated chair and sets her bag down, the assistant turns and does some confusing additional things to the door, causing it to make several further strange noises. O5s have non-trivial privacy and security requirements. The office is spacious, but somehow contrives to be dark despite two big corners of window and broad daylight outside. The walls are all bookshelves and dark wood paneling. Perfectly stylish, but a style from the 90s, a little warm, and not yet old enough to be fashionable yet. As for the fellow behind the desk, well, an O5 never looks like you imagine. Marion takes a deep breath. So, what's the topic? All I got was the meeting invitation, no agenda or subject. I mean, an O5 says jump, you jump, but, looking to her right, she notices that the assistant, without saying anything or making any undue noise, has set his tablet down on the table. He produces a gun and aims it at her head. Marion stops talking. She sits still in her chair for a while, absorbing the change of pace, letting her heart rate rise to a hummingbird's and then start to flatten again. Okay, she hazards. She licks her lips and grips the armrest, otherwise staying perfectly still, waiting for another prompt. The assistant's face is totally neutral now, like this is just how meetings go. Maybe it is, for people up here. Who are you? 058 asks her. Marion blinks. What? Oh, God. Let me rephrase, 058 says. Marion Wheeler, 49, with loving husband and 2 boys in tow. Likes camping, hiking, and ornithology. Boring mother with perfect airtight background and financials, as far back as we can examine. And you've got a full foundational credits, which we've never issued, including access to a list of installations and rooms which some of these locations don't exist or were torn down decades ago. At least one hasn't been built yet. And you've got the front door key to it. That's before we get to your SCP access control lists, which I can only term as egregious. So you're a spy, and your objectives are misaligned with ours, and Clay wanted to cut XI3 loose on you. But I was able to bring him around. I talked him into a face-to-face. I thought there was a slim chance that if we locked you in a bomb-proof room and asked politely, you'd have the good sense to spare yourself the rest. Marion has long since stopped listening. You dullard. And now, she says, she can finally speak. I'm your chief of antimemetics. We don't have an antimemetics division, Clay says. Yes, you do. We do. 058 says, we have a memetics division, a telecontainment division, fire services, Ops A, Ops B, personnel, D personnel, and 2 dozen others. We don't have an anti-memetics division. Do we have an irony division? Marianne asks. She hesitates hopefully. No? All right. We'll try this. Why do you think the anti-memetics division would show up in the listing? This is just a cover story, Clay says to the 058, not taking his eyes off Marion. It's a good one, but she had it worked out in advance. Clay, lose the peace, says the 05. And grudgingly, Clay does. Marion relaxes, fractionally. There are SCPs with dangerous memetic properties. There are contagious concepts which require containment just like any physical threat. They get inside your head and ride your mind to reach other minds, right? Right, 058 says. You could name a score of SCPs fitting this description without even thinking. There are SCPs with anti-memetic properties, Marion goes on. There are ideas which cannot be spread. There are entities and phenomena which harvest and consume information, particularly information about themselves. You take a Polaroid photo of me, and it'll never develop. You'll write a description down with a pen on paper and hand it to someone, but what you've written turns out to be hieroglyphs, and nobody can understand them, not even you. You can look directly at one, and it won't be invisible. But you'll still perceive nothing there. dreams you can't hold on to, and secrets you can never share, and lies, and living conspiracies. It is a conceptual subculture of ideas consuming other ideas, and sometimes segments of reality, sometimes people, which makes them a threat. That's all there is to it, really. Anti-memes are dangerous, and we don't understand them. Therefore, they are part of the problem. Hence my division. We can do the sideways thinking that's needed to combat something which can literally eat your combat training. 058 stares back at her for a long time. Clay fidgets, disliking and distrusting the story, but the 05 seems more open to the concept. Name one. Name an anti-memetic SCP. SCP-055. There is no SCP-055. Again, yes, there is. There isn't. SCP numbers aren't assigned sequentially. There are gaps. That number hasn't been assigned. It's not superstition. We have enough to be concerned about without arbitrary numerical mysticism. We have SCP-666, we have SCP-013, but there's no SCP-001, and there is no SCP-055. Clay, 058 says, "You should look at this." He turns his monitor to Clay so that he can see the file that he has just retrieved. Clay bends over and reads it from top to bottom. Stunned, he scrolls back and reads it all a second time. But that file's dated from 2008, 058 says. It's got all the right flags and signatures. It's keyed and coded. It's real. "You've seen this before?" Clay asks him. "Never in my life," 058 says. "As far as I can remember, anyway. On the other hand, if the content is accurate, both of us have probably seen it a dozen times over." Clay glares at Marion. "This isn't possible." And Marion nearly spits. "For Christ's sake, Clay, how long have you been working here?" "But if this SCP is this powerful," he begins. "Yes." "Who wrote the file?" The 05 finishes. "And for that matter, how was the interview conducted, and who was Bartholomew Hughes? And most importantly, how do you, Mrs. Wheeler, retain knowledge of any of this?" "Bart Hughes wrote the file. He's dead," Marion says. "What happened to him? You don't want to know." There's a very long pause while both 058 and his assistant react to this. In fact, they pass through a long, discrete sequence of reactions. Indignation at the seeming rudeness, confusion at Wheeler's caution in front of sinister superiors, surprise at the magnitude of the claim, pure disbelief, comprehension, and finally, horror. "What?" 058 asks carefully. "Would happen if we did know?" "It would happen to you as well," Marion says, levelly. "As for the rest of your questions, we manage that pharmaceutically. We know we have Class A amnestics for people who very badly need to forget things. Of course you do know that. Who could forget about Class A amnestics? Well, in antimemetics, we have a different pill for people who need to remember things that would otherwise be impossible to remember. Mnestics Class W, X, Y, and Z. Same Greek root word as the word mnemonic. The M is silent." In her bag, her phone beeps again. With a nod of approval from the 05, Marion reaches into her bag and turns her phone off, acknowledging the prompt this time instead of postponing it. She pulls a blister pack from another pocket and pops a pill out. It's hexagonal and green. She holds it up and is satisfied to see a flicker of recognition on 058's face. He's beginning to put it back together. Marion says, "These are Class W mnestics. The weakest suitable for continual use. 2 pills per day. Go down to the site pharmacy and ask. The pharmacist will claim they don't have stock of any such thing. They're misremembering, so tell them to double check." 058 sighs. "And now I think I get it. I see why we're having this conversation at all." "Yes," Marion says, popping a second pill out and handing it over to him. "It's because you missed a dose. You're supposed to be on these the same as me and everybody on my staff. It's the only way we can work. You forgot to take a pill, and then you forgot all the information that the pills were helping you retain. You forgot why you were taking them, who gave them to you, where to get more. You forgot about me and my entire department, and now I have to bring you up to speed. And if I take this, I'll remember this whole conversation and we won't have to have it again. Hopefully not, Marion says, and Clay pipes up. Should I be taking those? Sorry, kiddo, 058 says. No, need to know. Maybe when you're an 05 yourself, he swallows the pill, and Marion swallows her too. So what is SCP-055? 058 asks. SCP-055 is nothing, Marion says, now relaxing entirely. As described in the file, a powerful information autosuppressor. As far as experimentation is uncovered, it can only be defined in negative terms. We can only record what it isn't, and we know it isn't safe for Euclid. We know it isn't round or square or green or silver. We know it isn't stupid, and we know it isn't alone. But what we do know is that it's weak. It's weak because it's the only antimimetic agent in our possession, which has a physical entry in the files. We have paper records of the thing. We have containment procedures. It's not safe, which means it's dangerous, but it's contained. The 058 blinks. You have procedures. Where? Marion points at her head. Then how many other anti-memes are out there? How much more dangerous do they get? 10 that I know of, Marion says. Statistically, probably at least 5 more that I don't know of. This does not count the antimimetic entities freely roaming the halls, not under containment. There are at least 2 in this room with us right now. Don't look. I said don't look. It's pointless. 058 does an impressive job of controlling himself, keeping his attention focused on Marion. Clay does not fare so well and quickly sweeps the whole room, even checking behind his back, making an ass of himself essentially. He finds nothing. He looks baffled. There is an invisible monster which follows me around and likes to eat my memories, Marion explains patiently. SCP-4987. Don't look it up, it's not there. I've learned to manage with it. It's like a demanding pet. I produce tasty memories on purpose so it doesn't eat something important like my passwords or how to make coffee. And what's the other one? Clay asks. With another nod from 058, Marion goes to her bag again. This time she pulls out a gun and shoots Clay twice in the heart. More aghast than in pain, Clay collapses sharply against the bookcase behind him. Pulling his head around to face Marion, he manages. How did you... Marion stands, aims more carefully, and shoots him a 3rd time. This time, in the head. 058 again does an impressive job of not reacting. That's Clay's gun. He deadpans. You stole it from him. It's tricky to steal a firearm this heavy from someone without them noticing, Marion explains, unloading it and carefully setting it down. But stealing a firearm and then stealing the memory of theft is a little easier. Like I said, a pet. Some pets are dumb enough when they can be trained. Yes, 058 says evenly. Not much I'd guessed. But why? Because you were supposed to be taking Class W Nestics, Marion says. You can't skip a dose of Class W Nestic. I've tried it. You can postpone a dose, but you can't forget unless someone actively prevents you from taking it. There's only one person who could get close enough to you to do that, and that's your assistant. And remember when I asked him how long he'd been working here? He didn't answer. Huh. I thought you were being rhetorical. He doesn't work here, Marion says. He's an anti-meme. Since when do you have an assistant? You don't have an assistant, Brent. Look at this office. It's got one desk. You've got a receptionist outside. She's the one who screens your calls and schedules your meetings. Where does Clay even sit? Where does he fit? Don't blame yourself. You're human. And these things are redaction incarnate. You need to think like a space alien to get around them. 058 asks a question, which, in any other workplace, would be absurd. Is he dead? Maybe, Marion says. I can put his corpse in our research queue, and we'll see what we can see when we open him up. There's a duality here, though. They're like parallel universes sharing the same space. It's conceptual versus concrete. Figurative versus physical. It's very unusual for things to cross over. I don't know what Clay was, but he had a human body, which instantly makes him weird, even by our standards. As ever, the search for stalemate continues. I will let you know if we get any closer. Any side effects of these pills? Nausea and dramatically increased risk of pancreatic cancer, Marion says. And very bad dreams. Wow. All right. So, that was we need to talk about 50/50. Wow. This is interesting. I like this. So far, I'm liking this. TINAD? What is TINAD? That was cool. That was very cool. We still have a few more within this like a series. We're gonna go up to, I think, 3 more. Yeah, I think we can do 1 or 2 more actually if we get through them fast. Yeah, I kind of made her sassy because I feel like she's gone through these. If she's gone through this situation already and knows what's happening, I'd be like, are we doing this again? Oh, that's Tinad. Oh, get it. I'm sorry. Yeah, in my head, Marion's like, I'm so done with this. Not again. Has this happened again? Probably not. If this was me, I'd be done. So now we've gone through 2 stories in the antimemetics division. Let's go through introductory antimemetics. Hopefully we'll get through it pretty fast. If you want a good history, see SCP-5000, and if you see that history now, you will miss so many things. We'll get through that. You know what? Because there's so many, I see so many, like, do these things, and I'm actually getting messages from, certain friends. Hey, can you read this? I think this is not gonna be our only reading stream, apparently. This is not good. We might plan another one in the future soon. It looks like we'll be planning another one in the future very soon. I mean, the nature of this channel really is like telling stories. The viewers like to tell jokes that that it's mostly visual novels. Well, that's because those are stories. Every game, every book, they're stories. All right, let's see. Forgive me, Flex. The human body I'm borrowing in order to... The human body I'm borrowing in order to read you these stories is not an English speaker. Not natively. Alright, if this is the true hook of the series, let's get into it. Let's get into it in a bit. For now, I have to go check on the animals again. Once again, it is a scalding heat in the Philippines, so I have to check on the animals, the birds every once in a while, the snakes to make sure they haven't eaten any of the birds and the mice, and then I have to check on the people. The people should be fine though. They can take care of themselves. Again, if you want to make any suggestions about which SCPs you would like to see, or even, again, not SCPs, creepypastas that are hopefully free or have been stated by the author that, okay, yeah, anyone can narrate this. Actually, some of the stories I've read tonight are from Reddits that are called r/free horror stories. You are free to add them into the stream suggestions channel in my Discord. And once again, if you want to see the Discord, you can find its flame by just typing in !Discord. So yeah, I'm gonna go check on the animals real quick. Everybody, please remember, stay hydrated. Gamer is pretty okay. Gamer is the only neutral term. What do you mean? Where'd you type in, ma'am? Dude, your diction and acting is so good by any standards, but your Twitch standards. Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, our nature here, our entire purpose here at the Grove is to tell stories, after all. If you watch any of my streams, most of the time, except when it's like just playing around, maybe playing some fun stuff, then yeah, we're mostly telling stories here. Again, a lot of visual novels get told here because they are more story and reading based. You will see a lot of those in this channel, quite honestly. Very story heavy things, because our purpose here at the Grove really is to tell stories, to share stories with each other. And I, as the keeper of this grove, well, I like to share stories and I like to tell them. Thus, well, we stream. If you actually want to check out any of the... To be fair, this is our first horror storytelling VOD, but this is not the first time you have heard me speak a lot during streams, because these streams are very chatty. And yeah, no, there's a lot of... We've done a few visual novels. The VODs are unfortunately not on Twitch because yeah, they do expire, but I think... Oh no, that command is not active. So the VODs are up on my YouTube, actually, in the what I call the Grove Archive. Thank you, Dew on the Grass. I'll go water one of the saplings for you. I appreciate it. Trust me, and they appreciate it too. So yeah, I should actually link that. If a mod is present, can they somehow like, can they link my YouTube to my Twitch so that when I activate it? Forgive me, I'm horrible at technology. I'm too old for this. My Twitch so that when I activate... Oh. No, that is not how that works. Yes, I am an old person, so I don't understand most of technology. I mean, I'm learning. The children came to the Grove one day and said, hey, Kyle, have you ever thought about telling stories on the internet? And I'm like, well, first of all, what is the internet? And now we're here. So much time has passed, and now we're here. This is a very clean setup. Thank you. It's gone through some changes and improvements. You might see that in the VODs, to be honest. There is a lot, some changes have gone through, aesthetic changes, or not aesthetic changes. This is still, I would never change the appearance of the Grove. The Grove is the Grove. Some changes in quality, of course. There are some VODs where my mic was incredibly low or bad still, and it needed some fixing, and thankfully we had a lot of help from one of a very often seen guest storyteller here on my streams, Mr. Pyre, who could not make it tonight. This was supposed to be, for those of you who are in the Discord, you know that this was supposed to be a stream for the visual novel / RPG, A Space for the Unbound, tonight with Pyre. But Pyre is preoccupied, and we respect his time. Thus, I decided to shift focuses to doing a stream that I did not plan to do until a little while later, which was creepypasta / horror reading stories, and now we're here. So this was a chance. This was a chance. It would be cool to have marshmallows. Honestly, I know you kids would roast marshmallows over me. You've done it before. People have done it before. Listen, the emote holding the hot dog. No. Those are the two white things at the end. Those aren't hands. Those are marshmallows. That's a hot dog flanked by 2 marshmallows on a stick. Yes. In case you forgot. Nice try bonking me, Max. Again, when you try to hit a fire with a wooden stick, what happens to the stick? But you know what? I commend you for continuing to try. Anyway, so we're gonna get back into There Is No Antimemetics Division, once again by Quantum. And we are gonna continue with Introductory Antimemetics. The stick bonked the fire? No, Max. No. No, son. No, son. No. Alright. Introductory Antimemetics. Junior researcher Kim's been working for the Foundation for all of 4 hours, and he feels pulverized. As if an anvil were dropped on his head in that first introductory lecture. It's lunchtime, and he's found a corner so far back in the cafeteria that nobody bothers him, where he can chew and swallow non-anomalous food, drinking apocalyptically strong coffee, and digest the hard lessons of the morning. On his Foundation-provided phone, he pages fretfully through the SCP files, for which he has clearance. Most of them have to be jokes. That's how they read. Like very bad, dark, frightening jokes. Kim's one of the 11 junior researchers in the new intake, and the other 10 are sitting in a separate group at a separate table, chatting animatedly to one another. There are some instructors here and there, munching sandwiches. Other than them, the cafeteria, large enough to seat 200 people or more, is deserted. To Kim, that seems odd. Site 41 is large. 3 skulking buildings with significant basement space, buried casually in the forest of central Colorado. But where is everybody? A man in a gray suit walks into the cafeteria, makes eye contact with Kim, and strides purposefully over. The man's suit is sharp enough to cut. He wears a tie pin and a platinum wristwatch as big as a brick. He looks badly mispaced. Site 41 is a working site. There's training, education, research, development, analysis, and even the containment of a very few safe SCPs going on here. Executives shouldn't ever be here. So what is he? A lost exec trying to find the helipad? Or a researcher or instructor? Dressing for the job he wants but not the job he has? Hell of a first day, the man says, holding out a hand. Alistair Gray, with an E. Kim, says Kim. Paul Kim. Good to meet you. What accent is that, if you don't mind me asking? Kim blinks. New York. I'm from New York. Are you the site director? You seem on edge. Well, that figures, doesn't it? Kim asks. You must know how that intro goes. It's like an atom bomb to that ego. I just had almost everything I know overturned. Turns out I've spent my entire life being protected from dangerous knowledge, as if the whole world outside is a ball pit for under sevens. Stepping out of that has been humiliating to start with. And he blinks again. Hey, what do you do here exactly? You didn't answer my question. You didn't answer mine. Of course I did. I'm from... And then he just stops. His train of thought running off the end of the track into air. It's on the tip of his tongue, the answer to Gray's question. But he can't get the words out. That's weird, he says, shaking his head. At this point, he also notices that Gray isn't wearing his badge. This could be an honest mistake, albeit an extremely serious one. But surely, execs don't get to the executive level without being scrupulously correct in everything they do. Who are you? Kim asks again. Your life story was fascinating. What? You spoke 4 languages, Gray tells him. 1 now and soon 0. 2 huge in intellect to specialize. Your education was a fusion of biochemistry and comparative literature. You felt as if you'd die if you couldn't find more foreign thoughts to cram into your head. You've been all over the world, hungry, and every country you've ever been to was like landing on another planet. You toy with anthropology, but there's too much world for one human race to ever understand, let alone one human. There's too much human race. We should pare it down. Kim nods. Would you excuse me for just 1 second? He gets up and hurries to another table, to the instructor whom he met earlier that day. When Kim gets close, he feels a kind of staticky sensation building up. He tries to shake her shoulder and succeeds in moving it a little, but it's like reaching through tar. Hey, there's a problem. There's an intruder. I think it might be an SCP. Doc? Look at me. Hello? She doesn't react. He tries the gaggle of fellow newcomers as well, but they keep chattering and hypothesizing, oblivious to him shouting and clapping in their ears. Hey, people, listen to me! No. He looks back, Gray has stood up and started moving towards him, still with that confident smile. And there's definitely something wrong with him now, because he's invisible through the tables. Like an augmented reality hollow projection jammed inside of Kim's eyeball. Kim realizes with a stab of fear that he can see Gray even when he blinks. His eyelids close, but Gray is still there, an apparition in what, for all of Kim's life, has been totally personal, private darkness. The only way he can avoid seeing Gray is to turn away, and even then he feels a radioactive prickling in the back of his eyeballs. Kim tries to phone one of the newbies. The phone in the newbie's pocket rings, and other than that, nothing happens. Nobody reacts. This doesn't make sense. Do you remember your father? I never knew my father, Kim says, edging away. Mom raised me. Gray's white smile is a fixture. These people loved your perspective. They were going to put you to work on anomalous anti-memes, but they don't remember you exist. You don't exist, Kim says, mainly to himself. There aren't any dangerous SCPs on this site. It's a safe site. So either you're not dangerous or nobody knows you exist. And if nobody knows you exist, then that means you're either brand new here or you're... What's an anti-meme? Hell of a first day, Gray asks. Are you sentient? You seem on edge, Gray says, and Kim bolts. He exits the cafeteria, turns a corner, and runs 10 or 11 paces down the corridor to where there's an elevator. He stabs the down button and waits. The elevator door is highly polished, reflective. Kim catches the sight of a face in the mirrored surface and nearly falls over with shock because it's a face he has never seen before. And apparently, it's his own. Jesus. Oh, no, 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 he babbles. What the hell? What the hell? Gray comes around the corner, still only strolling, just as the elevator cracks open. Kim dives in and punches the lowest floor, basement level 8. It's instinctive, although he could rationalize the decision in retrospect. He can't just get in the car and drive. It's better if Gray stays on site than if he's let loose in the irrational reality. And to do that, it's better if Kim retreats to the lowest, darkest corner of the site for which he has access, and then waits for Gray and locks all the doors behind them, and then waits to die. The elevator starts descending, and the apparition of Gray, visible through the doors and floors, disappears upward, shrinking with distance and perspective, but still smiling broadly down at Kim. Kim paces in the elevator. I don't remember what my face looks like. I had eaten all my secondary languages. But I don't remember learning anything other than English, so it's eating my memories. It's consuming information. I can't contact anybody directly, which means I'm on my own. I'm not trained for this. He hammers his head once again against the elevator wall and stares at his shoes. But I don't know that. What if I've been trained, but I don't remember my training anymore? What if I've been working here for years and I only think this is my first day? What if I've met this thing before? What if everybody on this site has met it multiple times and nobody cares? Is this what an anti-meme is? Kim remembers the near empty cafeteria and miles of totally unoccupied corridors and vacant office and lab space. Maybe it's not just eating my memories. Maybe it eats people whole. Maybe removes them completely from history. Maybe it's hunting. It's been haunting the site for years, and that's why it's so empty. Because it's nearly finished exterminating all of us. I need to help. I need to get help. I need to warn somebody. How? I can't talk to people. I can't phone them. I should write an SCP. But surely someone's already thought of that. He pulls his phone out. He pulls out the listing. Nearly 10,000 SCP entries, and 100 of them are tagged anti-memetics alone. Kim clears his mind. Gray, with an E. Grey. 4739. SCP-4739. Object Class Heater. Special containment procedures. I'm disregarding the format because time is a factor. If you're reading this, you've already been isolated from the Foundation at large. Attempts to signal for help are futile. You are now inside 4739's gullet. After ingestion and prior to digestion, you need to get to lab SO41-B08-053 as soon as possible and continue the research until you find a way to stop or kill Gray before it kills you. But don't read the rest until you're in the elevator. Description. At that moment, the elevator doors open at basement level 8. Alistair Gray is waiting, still smiling disarmingly. He steps forward. Desperate, Kim hurls his phone overarm at the creature's forehead. It's a solid chunk of metal, and it's a dead hit. Gray reels backward and cracks his skull against the wall. By the time he recovers, Kim is out of sight, herring away down the left corridor, just echoing fading footsteps on concrete. 2 45-degree turns, and room 53 is in sight. The door at the farthest end, it looks like a submarine bulkhead. Kim spots the keypad from way out. 4 digits. He tries 4739 and it works first. The bulkhead mechanism takes agonizing seconds to open. Come on, come on! Do you remember your mother? He hears Gray calling down the corridor. I never knew my parents. I was an orphan. Kim hisses under his breath. And for a split second, he wonders what Gray might really mean by that. But he doesn't have time to dwell on it. The bulkhead opens. Kim slides in and pulls it closed behind him, locking the mechanism up again, as if that'll buy him even 1 second. The lab inside is sizable, windowless of course, and stacked to the ceiling with a jumble of equipment, which Kim hardly recognizes. There are pieces of thick, shattered glass underfoot. In the corner, there's a computer terminal, locked. Kim unlocks it, and there's the same entry waiting for him. SCP-4739 is a powerful, slow-acting, anti-memetic kill agent, taking the appearance of a male Caucasian business executive calling itself Alistair Gray. SCP-4739 is attracted to dense clusters of organically stored information, essentially extremely knowledgeable, complicated, and interesting people. SCP-4739 isolates its victim from the outside world by enveloping them in an anti-memetic field which makes it impossible for the victim, or anything done by the victim, to be perceived or remembered. SCP-4739 then consumes the victim's memories and knowledge until they become vegetative and die. This process takes between 15 minutes and 2 hours and is described as being like Alzheimer's disease and fast forward. SCP-4739 is believed not to be sentient, although it imitates the behavior of a sentient being to the extent that it can appear sentient to the attentive. Its victims are able to move and act freely, since it is impossible to escape once caught, or to signal for help. Communications such as written notes, graffiti, and electronic mail do get sent and persist in reality, but SCP-4739's effect spreads with each message, making it impossible for an external observer to perceive the message until such time as SCP-4739 catches them as well. The SCP entry which you are currently reading is created and maintained by victims of SCP-4739 because it is only visible to victims of SCP-4739. If you are reading this, then 4739 has caught you. You are now isolated from the Foundation at large and constitute an effective Foundation of one. You have between 15 minutes and 2 hours to reach Site 41, Basement Level 8, Laboratory 53. Familiarize yourself with the existing research and continue this research until you find a way to contain or decommission SCP-4739, or likely, die. If your field of expertise is not related to anti-memetic containment, we sincerely apologize and advise you to start learning fast. SCP-4739 has consumed Foundation researchers since we started counting on August 3, 2013. If you are reading this entry for the first time, please add a mark. We estimate at least 50% of its victims never make it as far as this database entry, so the true victim count is more than twice this figure. But how do I kill it? Kim screams. He scrolls and scrolls through the research, which is chaotic and haphazardly arranged, because nobody has found the spare seconds to sort it out. There are dozens of separate lines of research contributed in by patchwork of a succession of victims, ending with variations on the same line. I'm going to try X. If you're reading this, X didn't work and I'm dead, which means approach X is a dead end and you have to think of something else. He reads, nobody has succeeded in physically engaging with Gray. Nobody can stall it, evade it, slow it, reason with it, or redirect it to some other target. People have tried poisoning their memories with indigestible ideas, drip-feeding their memories to Gray to slow him down, replacing their memories faster than Gray can eat them, and then force-feeding Gray too many memories at once to overfeed him and blow him up. They've tried committing suicide by Class A amnestic overdose. None of it has worked. More than a few hundred people, most of them apparently possessing doctorates, have slid into the maw of this thing, fought briefly, and, with greater or lesser degree of dignity, died. There are no remaining untied threads. I'm fucked, Kim concludes. He glances up. Gray's not in the room yet, but Kim can see him strolling down the last stretch of corridor. He's a totally intangible being. Physical obstructions are irrelevant to him. He can't be hurt. He clutches the pocket where he used to keep his phone. Wait a second. He scrolls again. He finds the 3 or 4 sad, desperate wretches who died confronting Gray physically. Combat knife and Glock, baseball bat. Kim looks up and checks the room. Sure enough, there's a bat rolled under a table. One man, an elderly botanist, far out of his depth, said he was just going to try whatever he could find that was the heaviest. That explains this shattered CRT television and the light layer of thick glass on the floor near the bulkhead. There's even CCTV footage of a botanist attempt. He accomplishes literally nothing. Gray is a holographic ghost, and the CRT drops right through him, imploding when it hits the floor at Gray's feet. The botanist spends the rest of the video running time and huddled in a corner, gradually losing his mind while Gray watches placidly. The difference being, Kim realizes with his eyes boggling, a phone is a solid brick of information, and before me nobody tried using information as a missile. Kim searches for the experiments, several of them scattered where the victim tried to divert Gray to a different data source. The general idea seemed to be to overload Gray by pointing him at something containing too much information. The internet, or the terabit feed from a live particle accelerator experiment, or a stack of hard drives containing the first few quadrillion binary digits of pi. But nobody could find out a way to distract Gray's attention. Prominently placed screens full of data he would ignore. Data beamed at him electromagnetically had no effect, and nobody could figure out a way to tunnel the information in through the victim's mind as extra memories. It was written off as impossible, closed as a line of investigation. The hard drives, Kim finds, are right there on the workbench next to the computer. It's a half-rack unit, a cuboidal block of metalwork as big and heavy as a bowling ball, one of the most ineffective conceivable melee weapons. Kim snatches up the 3 longest pieces of the Ethernet cable he can find and starts plaiting them into a chain. Then he remembers who he is and where he is and what his responsibility are. He goes to the computer, to the SCP entry, adds himself to the victim tally, and writes up exactly what it is he's about to do, what he's about to try, because he might not be the last one, and the world needs to know that this didn't work. Gray comes through the lab bulkhead to find most of the equipment in the room toppled onto the floor, to create room for the black and silver drive array that Paul Kim is whirling around his head on a 2-meter chain made of plated network cable. It makes a low thrumming noise as it whirls. Gray is not intelligent enough to stop moving forward and catches the array directly in the side of the head, rack mount point first, like a morning star. Gray absorbs a few trillion digits of the impact, but it isn't enough. There's a green snap of light and a noise like a subway train short-circuiting, and graze a pile in the corner. His head caved in and the drive array partially demolished in pieces around him. Kim decides that history can fill in whatever quip it likes best. It was chewing its way up the antimemetic division's hierarchy, Wheeler tells him in the aftermath. It was only a matter of time until it bit down on somebody dangerous. Congratulations on demonstrating a basic level of competence when it counted. Dozens of others couldn't. Kim still feels rattled, but the shock is dissipating, faster than he'd expected. Marion Wheeler, it turns out, is the antimemetics division chief. She is Kim's new boss. I want to say it was dumb luck. I want to say that it just threw my phone. It was instinct. It was muscle memory. It was my first day, and I got lucky as hell. I want to say those things. But I'm sitting here and turning those statements over, and none of them would be true, would they? Wheeler waits expectantly and says nothing. You're not my new boss, Kim says. You're just my boss. This isn't my first day at all. I've been working here for... It must be over a decade, right? I think I've been a professional antimemetics researcher since at least the mid-2000s. It's just that the first thing Grade 8 was my memories of everything past the first day, and even then... I see very little luck in what happened today, Wheeler says. Instinct and muscle memory are just deep forms of training. Like I said, a basic level of competence. An ability to piece your own life and all of your past knowledge back together faster than nearly anybody else. This is what we try to drill into you. And sometimes, thankfully, it takes. This isn't even the first time we've had this conversation, Kim continues. There have been other incidents with other SCPs with amnestic powers. You've sat there and watched me put myself back together before. And it hasn't gotten old yet, Wheeler admits, with something which might be approaching a smirk. How long does it usually take me to recover? A few months, Wheeler says. But if you want the honest truth, people in this division are as competent on day one as they will ever be. You come to the job firing on all cylinders or not at all. The rest is just fine-tuning and chemistry. So what you're actually saying is you don't care about my mental state and you need me back at work now. Wheeler nods. I need an updated SCP entry. Just to begin with, I need you to nail down the model for Gray's predatory pattern and exactly how you defeated it. I want you to work out what you did with the bodies, incinerated, disintegrated, or just left them lying around the site in rotting, perceptually cloaked heaps. And I need countermeasure for when it comes back. It's not dead? Wait, Kim says. I think I know this one. It's coming back to me. Ideas don't die. Okay. That's true. You have to kill everybody. That's very funny though. If the SCP's goal is to kill everybody, it'll essentially kill itself. Not unless you consider a sentient SCP as like something that can perceive. But I'm guessing it doesn't kill. They don't do that to each other. Maybe not. I wouldn't know. So, wow. First of all, wow. You were right. That is a hell of a hook. That is a hell of a hook. You should have started with that. It's really good. I am surprised. I mean, I knew it would be good, because usually SCPs are very, very, like, they're brilliant, honestly. The people behind them, chef's kiss to you, all of you. But yeah, unfortunately, we are past the time where I actually have to take a walk soon. These streams end around the time that I need to take a long walk into, well, walk is relative. I don't have legs. I'm a fireball. But yeah, I need to take a walk into the jungle just to check on everything, just to make sure everything is still in order. Because sometimes, well, sometimes things get messy. Yeah, I'm sorry, dew on the grass. Very sorry. But yeah, I'm once again I'm going to provide the links. I'm going to provide the links of every single story that was told today in the Discord, so that all of you might, in case you want to check it out. Some of them might be a bit difficult considering one of them is actually like, you know, they're just free on Reddit and I can't. It's been copy pasted to hell, so who knows who actually did it first. Oh, okay. All right. Me in a rotting, perceptually cloaked heap. Yeah, for sure. So this was great, honestly. Dew on the grass, welcome to the home grove. May you find something here that is for you. And hopefully you also respect the rules of this place and respect each other. This has been our stories for the night. Stories, really. A lot of stories. I'm wondering, do we raid out? Do we raid out to somebody? Let me check real quick who's streaming tonight. Let's see, shall we? Oh, thanks for the sparks, of course. Thank you, Max. I always appreciate your sparks. I wonder if there's a point to rating T, considering T and I always have the same viewers. Well, no. You know what? Yeah, we're gonna raid T. We're gonna raid T. So I'm sending you guys over to Anaconic T, a very good friend of ours who actually has also been here as a guest storyteller. They have been here as a guest storyteller as well in our channel. They were with us telling the story of No Good Noel, in case some of you may have forgotten. So yeah, Dew on the Grass. If you want to see any of the past visual novel storytellings, you may find it on my YouTube. I do believe that my YouTube is in the link in my about on Twitch. Alternatively, if you're already in my Discord, there is a channel called Summon Cow where you can find all my links. Hey, don't fight now, kids. I don't approve of fighting here. Not unless it's funny. But yeah, we're gonna raid out to T, and the message is... what do you guys want the message to be? I mean, the default is fire raid, so... You know what? Yeah, let's do that. So your message for T... Your raid message for T, and do please play Cry of Fear. Yeah, you know what? Do that. Our raid message is play Cry of Fear, so that T will actually do it. And I want you to do it with the Cal check emote if you have it. Oh, not that. Sorry. Let me do that again. Play Cry of Fear! Exclamation point! Exclamation point! Exclamation point! This is your raid message, kids. That's your raid message. Play Cry of Fear. So yeah, please go support T. I very much enjoyed our storytelling for the night. I feel like this is not going to be the last one. This was fun, and I'm glad we actually found someone new in the community as well, and thankfully you guys all enjoyed. So, salamat po sa pagdalo nyo sa Tahanang Kakahuyan. Thank you for your time here at the Home Grove. I'm gonna go take a walk. I will see you guys next time.